Hello, this is CRP speaking to you live on this Sunday, January 16th, 2022. Oh man, half the month has gotten behind us already. It's just like we started the year and already we're well on our way. And so, I'm going to be talking about the renewable energy business and why I consider it a scam. Now, I have some experience in this business that I'm going to go into in some detail. I know the solar energy business pretty well. But I know a little bit about the other renewable and alternative energy businesses, and I'm going to be discussing the energy business in general. Now, this talk is designed for somebody who doesn't know anything about the subject matter. Okay. I'm assuming that you all don't know shit, and rather than flood you with data and studies and numbers, the fact is, most of these numbers have been gamed by the various players that are looking to cement their position. The whole energy business has become extremely polarized. So I'm not looking at it from the point of view of a politician or of an advocate. I'm looking at it from the point of view of a businessman because I was involved in this as a business. It was certainly, great to be, like, helping out the environment and shit like that. But I didn't really care about that. I cared about making money. And the renewable energy business is an insanely lucrative business if you more or less know what you're doing. And so I'm going to explain it and I'm going to tell you how the scam works. Okay. Now, before I get started, I'd appreciate you, as usual, giving me a +333. If you guys can see and hear me properly, I'd appreciate it. And while I'm waiting for chat to catch up, I'm just going to tell you, as usual, where is Tiffany Dover? Where is Tiffany Dover? And if you're new and you don't know what Tiffany Dover refers to, Google her name. Google her name and you'll find out soon enough. Okay, lots of +333, so everything is copacetic. Great. I don't have much of an audience today. I only have 24 people. Boo-hoo. I hope that more people will join. But then again, this isn't a sexy topic. I don't think it's a sexy topic at any rate. But I think it's an important subject because it points to the level of corruption in our society. We have seen so much corruption, and the renewable energy business is just one of those corruptions. And we have seen it now with the whole COVID and the vaccine situation, that it's so incredibly corrupt. And so I think it's important to look at this business, which is totally, it's not in the news right now. Nobody's really talking about it, although, well, certain aspects of it are coming into the news, and I'll talk about them, in just a bit. Specifically, the Europe's energy crisis, which is coming up. It's going to be really fucking nasty. But the point is, I want to discuss this business so that you can see the level of corruption and how the government and private players have corrupted the whole system so that they make a lot of money to the detriment of the society as a whole. See? Yeah. So, okay, so let me just get cracking. You don't need to see my face because my voice, my deep, deep and knowledgeable voice is all that you need. Ha ha ha. Sorry about that. Yeah, so let's get cracking. Everybody can hear me properly. Everything is good. And remember, where is Tiffany Dover? Never forget. Where is Tiffany Dover? Some picture of her from last Thanksgiving is emerging. I don't believe it. I don't believe it at all. I just don't. Okay, because look, if Tiffany Dover were alive and well, it would be no trick at all to just produce her and have her give a little press conference, and everybody could say that us anti-vaxxer conspiracy theorists are completely insane and that Tiffany Dover is perfectly fine. But they leak some random picture, but that's it. They don't produce the woman. If she's alive and well, it should be no trick at all. Huh? So anyway, so where is Tiffany Dover? Okay, now Mickey says, I agree that, let me put this on briefly before I get started. He says, I agree that solar is a scam. They charged you a ton of money to pay for electric capacity to make sure you still pay an electric bill. Well, I don't know about that. That's on a consumer level, Mickey. But what I will say is that Not just solar, it's all of this. Okay. I'm not going to be paying attention to the retail consumer of electricity. I'm going to look at the macro aspects so you can see the motivation of the people involved, why they are pursuing this bullshit. There's a lot of money to be made, basically. So let me get cracking. Okay. So, preamble, my position on energy. Okay. My thinking, and I am speaking as a conservative, okay? Non renewable energy should not be frittered away on cars and trucks because non renewables, it's in the name, will end. And we will need those resources for other purposes into the future, okay? Petroleum is an extremely useful chemical. All kinds of nifty stuff can come out of petroleum, not just gasoline to power your car or your truck. And so my thinking is that frittering away petroleum on gasoline is foolish. Natural gas frittering away on heating or energy production is foolish because in these centuries and millennia into the future, we will have use for these resources. Lots of uses that perhaps at this time we can't even imagine that might later on be extremely necessary for us. And like I said, I can't imagine what they could possibly be. But see, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, Romans were perfectly aware, for instance, of petroleum. They'd seen it all around. They understood what petroleum was and tar and all the rest of it. They could never imagine that petroleum would be distilled and turned into gasoline and into plastic products. They couldn't have imagined that. See? The same today in the year 2022. I can't imagine what will happen in 2,000 years insofar as these chemicals are concerned. All kinds of weird uses might be emerge from these chemicals, and so to fritter them away on just fucking cars, it's just stupid, huh? But anyway, I'm not going to get into the history of why oil became such a dominant energy player and the evolution of the car and all the rest of it. I'm not getting into it because it's a huge fucking topic. It goes into urban planning. It goes into the issue of the automobile society and how lucrative it was for certain industries back in the day that now are inconsequential, like Ford Motor Company and Chevrolet and so forth. All of that history, that's for another webinar. But I want you to focus on the fact that oil can run out. A lot of people talk about peak oil. Yeah, that's all good and fine. But the thing is, see, when the peak oil is going to happen, I don't know. Maybe it happened already. Maybe it'll happen in the future, but that's not important. We all recognize that oil is a finite resource. And so my thinking is don't fritter away on bullshit, on cars and shit. Use it for something more useful. For this reason, renewable and alternative fuel sources should be our number one priority. Yeah, you heard right. Me, a super conservative, and I'm on the same page as the fucking communist Greens. We should be looking for alternative and renewable fuel sources. It should be our number one priority. My personal best bet is nuclear fusion. For those of you who don't know, the difference between fusion and fission, which is what we have at this time, is that fission splits an atom. And in that split, energy is released. And this energy, insofar as nuclear power is concerned, essentially boils water. And when it boils water, it drives a turbine. When it drives that turbine produces electricity. It produces electricity because the turbine shaft spins around magnets, and that creates an electrical charge. And that's basically our current nuclear power. Mm. It's the basis of the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Fusion, on the other hand, is when two atoms are fused together, usually two hydrogen atoms. They are fused together, and this produces two things. It produces a helium atom, and it produces a lot of energy, an extreme amount of energy, much more than fission for that matter. Now, of course, fusion is the energy that is powering the sun. When you look up at the sky, what are you seeing? You are seeing a giant ball of hydrogen that is burning. It's burning because the mass of the hydrogen on the sun is so great that the hydrogen atoms are collapsing into each other and burning and turning into helium. That's what's happening. That's the power of the sun. That's fusion. And we see it each and every day. And it, of course, exists. It's not a theoretical, it's right there in the fucking sun. Okay. Now, fusion, to do it on Earth, well, that's a totally different story. And it's hard for a whole bunch of reasons. You can have an uncontrolled fusion reaction, and that's a hydrogen bomb. A hydrogen bomb, what is a hydrogen bomb? It's basically a fission bomb with uranium or plutonium at its core, surrounded by a layer of hydrogen. And what happens is that the nuclear, I mean, this is simplified, of course, the fission bomb is exploded in such a way that it creates enormous pressure on the hydrogen surrounding it. And that hydrogen fuses into helium and releases enormous amounts of energy. The Tsar bomb, which the Soviets dropped, I think in 1959 or 58, I want to say, something in the decade of the 50s at any rate. The Tsar bomb was the largest bomb ever dropped. And it was tested out in the late 50s, as I said, and it was a hydrogen bomb. That is a fusion reaction. Okay. And the inventor of the hydrogen bomb was Andrei Sakharov, just so that you all know. Anyway, um, my thinking is that into the future, fusion ought to be our energy source. It's the cleanest. You burn hydrogen and you get energy and helium. Helium is an inert gas. And if it's not collected, it will evaporate into the atmosphere and drift off into outer space because helium is far lighter than the atmosphere. And it is an inert gas, so it doesn't react with anything. It's perfectly harmless. It'll just literally do nothing. Okay. Anyway, it's zero pollution energy. Okay. And what you would do with fusion is, you could have it power a turbine, and of course, when you power a turbine, you're boiling water, but what is released is water vapor, and it's inconsequential. And it's non polluting, of course. And the other thing you can do is potentially put that electrical energy not just into a grid, but into batteries. My thinking is that battery technology is going to continue to improve by leaps and bounds as it has been improving. Now, this is my position that we should be focusing all our brain power on fusion and improving batteries. Eventually, if we work on these two items, eventually we will get to a position where we can load up an airplane with batteries that will power the engines via electricity stored in those batteries. And we won't have to worry about burning petroleum. And that will mark the turning point. Because at this time, we do have batteries that can power a car. We've had them for close to 30 years, actually more than 30 years. The actual invention of not the invention, it's not really an invention per se, but the first time the proof of concept was made of a car with electrical engines that was powered by batteries, that was like in the 60s or something like that. Okay. And the Chevrolet EV1 was the first mass produced electric car. That is a car that was powered by electricity that was stored in batteries. And so my thinking is fusion and batteries. That's where we ought to be devoting all of our energy. Of course, we're not doing that. Our energy in the sense of investigation and research and all the rest. We're not doing that because we're fucking morons. And oh yeah, before I get going, I'm going to talk a few times about megawatts. This is the only bit of information that you ought to know. A megawatt of power services roughly 600 households, plus or minus 200, depending on factors, depending on how much electricity they use, because maybe it's too hot and they need to run the AC, or too cold and they need to run the heater. It depends on factors. Few households run on more than 1,000 kilowatts a day. Okay, so the number of 600 households plus or minus 200, that's a fair number for 1 megawatt of power. Okay, that's all you need to know. It's not a really important figure because, like I'll get into in a second, I'll throw some figures at you, but they're very mild and they're not going to hurt. Okay, so that's my preamble. Now, there are two kinds of energy. There's fossil fuels and renewable and alternative energies. Okay, notice alternative energies and renewable energies are not necessarily the same thing because there are some alternative energies that are non-renewable. Okay, so just keep that in mind. The fossil fuel ones are pretty obvious: oil, coal, and natural gas. Oil is distilled into gasoline. It's also distilled into heating oil, which, as the name implies, heats people's what you call it. Oh, I'm blanking out on the word. You know what I mean. Mm, heating oil it burns for the furnace. That's the word I was looking for the furnace of a lot of houses in New England and older houses in Europe. Anyway, coal. It was used to power electric stations at this time. It used to be used to power furnaces in homes. And that was what happened in London that created smog, rather. It was a combination of smoke from coal burning furnaces and fog. And that was the creation of the word smog, smoke and fog. Now, coal now is only used for electrical generation in coal burning stations, which are extremely cheap to build. That's why you see a lot of coal burning electric plants in third world and developing nations because it's so cheap. And I'm going to get to the prices in just a little bit. Okay. Now, the third is natural gas. Now, it's important to understand that right now, Russia is the player insofar as natural gas is concerned. Just about every country in the world produces a little bit of natural gas, but the big players are the usual suspects: the Middle East, North America, and Russia. And right now, for factors that I'll get into in just a little bit, Russia is the key player, and all kinds of funny shit is happening. Okay, those are fossil fuels. Now, the green renewable energies and alternative energies are hydroelectric, which isn't really considered green, even though it is, because hydroelectric has been around for decades. The Hoover Dam in the United States, that's a hydroelectric plant. Okay. Hydroelectric, solar, wind, nuclear, and biomass. The ones that typically are called green, quote unquote, are solar, wind, and biomass. Now, biomass is a catch all term for any kind of system that essentially relies on bioorganisms, either to burn those bioorganisms or have those bioorganisms produce something burnable. Okay. Now, how do you burn a biomass? Well, like wood, for instance. Wood is a biomass and you burn it and you get energy out of that burn, right? That's biomass. Now, of course, burning wood pollutes to high heaven, okay? As anybody who's had like a little campfire can attest to, right? There are other kinds. There's um, what was it called? Analectic burning. So it was this really neat system whereby basically you take a bunch of trash, organic trash, and you throw it into an anabaric chamber, that is a chamber without any oxygen, and you toss in some bacteria, and this bacteria eats through all the organic garbage and produces methane, and you burn that methane to drive a turbine. It's really great. All kinds of funky ass technologies are in the catch all term biomass. Okay, now nuclear energy, as we're going to get to. Well, nuclear energy is, as a practical matter, it started in the very late 40s into the early 1950s, and nuclear is, bottom line, the cleanest energy around. It is the cleanest, and with the least amount of environmental impact, regardless of what the naysayers say. Hydroelectric, everybody says that hydroelectric is so great. Well, the problem is that, see, hydroelectric causes all kinds of problems. You're basically damming a river. That's what you need to do in order to get hydroelectric. And that is going to have an environmental impact, and sometimes a severe environmental impact, okay, on whatever happens downstream of the dam. And in some cases, it causes all kinds of political problems. Right now, China and India have all kinds of problems because the Chinese have dammed up a bunch of rivers that feed the Indians water, and they need that water. The Indians, I mean the South Asians, they need that water very badly, and that's causing all kinds of political havoc and economic havoc and social havoc for the Indians. So hydroelectric is not, lickety split clean. In some areas it is, but those are actually rare and exceptional. I mean, like the Hoover Dam that dams up the Colorado River, that's exceptional. Most of the dams cause all kinds of problems. Okay. So then there's solar and there's wind. Okay. And I'll get to those in just a minute. But you all basically know what solar energy is. Solar energy is A panel that once it is hit by direct sunlight, it creates a photovoltaic charge, and this is how energy is produced by a solar farm, a panel of solar. Excuse me. Solar energy panels are arrayed in farms over a large area, hopefully an area that receives a lot of sunlight and has very little population. And that combination is exceedingly rare, of course, because when you have a place that has a lot of sunlight, people want to live there. Uh, I mean, look at Southern California. Why do you think people live in Southern California? Southern California would be perfect for a solar energy farm. But the problem is that, I don't know, all those Southern Californian people decided to move there first, the bastards. I mean, you see the problem. Okay. Then there's wind energy. And there's two kinds of wind energy. There's onshore and offshore. Onshore is basically on some farm or some other area, usually flat and therefore windy, because flat areas are windy. Mountainous areas are not windy because the mountains block the breeze. The Coriolis effect does not have a chance to build up so that you can really drive a wind turbine when it's mountainous. You need flat area, or you need to put the wind turbine at the high mark, at the high point of the area, which can be extremely tricky. And also, a lot of times, this high point is in the middle of fucking nowhere. So transmitting that energy, that electrical energy that's generated by the wind turbine to a place where there are people is a hassle and a half in and of itself. Okay. So there's onshore. Then there's offshore, because by definition, the ocean doesn't have any mountains. So if you put offshore wind turbines, that sounds really promising, right? But the problem is twofold. Number one, installation is a fucking bitch. Number one. And number two, corrosion becomes a huge factor, not of the pieces of the wind turbine. And I'm going to get to that in a second, because the parts of the wind turbine are a fucking ecological nightmare, okay? Because all that shit does not biodegrade. Those huge blades, the materials that from which they are manufactured, plastic and ceramics, they don't degrade. They don't biodegrade. You can just bury them and they'll be there 10,000 years from now, okay? They're kind of like a fucking nightmare, and they're fucking huge, okay? So there's wind. I mean, I just want to go over these so that you all know what the hell I'm talking about. Now, most people tend to think that green energy is cheaper than conventional per kilowatt hour. Is that true? Fuck no. It's wrong as fuck. Green energy is extremely expensive. Okay? When I'm talking about green, I'm talking solar, wind, and biomass. Okay? I'm leaving aside hydroelectric, because hydroelectric has been around so long that it's essentially traditional. Okay? It's a renewable, but it's traditional. So let's leave it aside from the green energy. Okay? Let's focus green energy. When I talk about green, I'm talking solar, wind, and biomass, and not burning of biomass like burning wood. Okay. I'm talking about the clever biomass like the anabaric chamber that I was talking about. Okay. Now, green energy is extremely expensive, and it has a lot of hidden costs and a lot of capital costs. Okay. Now let's go piece by piece. Okay. The first thing that we should look at is the actual cost. I'll get back to the outline I was doing. I want you to look at this quick chart. This is an incredibly simple chart and ought to be no trouble at all. This is the net capital costs, the installation costs of these various forms of electrical generation, because we're only talking about electrical generation here in this broadcast. Okay, electrical generation is what matters. So if you look at gas oil combined cycle power plants, which is the typical oil and gasoline burning power plant, it costs $1,000 for the kilowatt. Remember, 1,000 kilowatts makes 1 megawatt. 1 megawatt drives roughly 600 households. Okay, powers roughly 600 households. Okay, now $1,000 per kilowatt, that would mean roughly $1 million capital investment for a megawatt, right? Okay. So that's the typical gas. Okay, and you're going to notice that there are some that have an arrow. The first three have an arrow. Well, because those three, you need fuel. You need to buy the fuel to run it. Okay, gas, oil. You need to buy gasoline or oil. Again, a combustion turbine of whatever sort. You got to buy the oil for that. And as you notice, it's the cheapest one. A coal burning plant with sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxide controls, that one also requires input, coal, right? Now, advanced nuclear, that's the one that kind of like doesn't, because you do need uranium, of course, but compared to the others, it's minimal cost. Okay. So over the lifetime of a nuclear energy plant, it's going to be a very small fraction of what you would spend on, say, coal for a coal burning plant, right? Now, you do have to keep in mind. And I should have written this out. The combustion turbine that's priced there at $710 for the kilowatt, okay, which would mean $710,000 for the megawatt. That includes coal. The coal that is being pointed out is a green coal, the very expensive coal burning plant that takes out the noxious gases that are being expelled by the combustion of coal. You see what I mean? Okay, so you start looking down the list, right? Now, the most expensive is offshore wind. It's $6,500 per kilowatt. That's 6.5 million per megawatt. Okay. Now, of course, if you want it to be economically viable, you're not going to put like one turbine out there. You're going to put like a whole bunch. And incidentally, one turbine, it depends how big the turbine is, but it can generate anywhere between, I think it's 10 and 100 megawatts, right? And so what you're talking about really here is an investment of up to $65 million per turbine, okay? 65 million on the very high end. You're really talking more along the lines of 6.5 to say 20 million per turbine. Okay. And do keep in mind, this is not an overnight issue. You can't just decide, oh, I'm going to just build a turbine and presto changeo, there it is. No, it takes time. And so because of it, you have financing costs that can accrue. And you think, oh, it's no big deal, financing costs. No, it can accrue awfully quickly. Okay. If it takes you half a year to set up a farm, that's a lot of fucking money that's going to be going down the tubes insofar as financing costs are concerned. Okay. So you have to keep in mind as you look at this list, this stuff is very expensive. The only one that doesn't seem to be particularly expensive is solar. Solar seems to be very cheap. But then there's the battery storage problem, okay? Because a lot of these solar energy stations, right? See, what is the problem with solar energy? Very obvious. Sometimes you have a sunny day, sometimes you have a cloudy day. When you have a cloudy day, what happens to the electrical grid that you are dispatching electricity to? Well, you don't have any electricity. You're not producing anything because it's fucking cloudy, or you're producing far less. And do keep in mind, just a little bit of cloud cover, okay, can reduce the efficiency of a solar panel by easily 15%, 50%, 50%, cut it in half, okay? And you can have an electrical, a solar energy farm that's producing 3 megawatts. It's supposed to produce 3 megawatts, and that's what it's rated for. And it's got, it's basically 3 hectares, a little bit more, 3.5, almost, but not quite 4 hectares of solar panels, right? And let's say that they're tracking solar panels, because there's a difference. Solar panels, they can be fixed. That is, that the panels don't move. And then there can be tracking solar panels, okay? By the way, that PV there, it says solar PV, it's photovoltaic. Okay, that's what it's referring to. Now, fixed, it's basically not moving. Tracking means that the panels um, twist, on their axis to track the sun. Now, you look at the cost and you think that the difference is only, $70 per kilowatt. No big deal. But the maintenance, my son, the maintenance. I'm only looking at, by the way, at the capital costs of these different energy producing systems, right? The maintenance costs of these things can vary enormously. A fixed solar panel farm, you don't have to do practically anything. You just have to have a guy, literally, minimum wage worker, who will basically spend all his day going through the farm cleaning it with basically with a squeegee. Okay, a giant squeegee. That's what he does all day. Okay, it takes one worker. What was it, the calculation we made? I mean, because we made it. It takes one worker a full day to do roughly 1,000 square meters of area. Okay, so there are 10,000 square meters to a hectare. So basically, it'll take for a 3 megawatt a facility, it'll take one worker essentially a month to do the whole clean up the entire solar panel farm. Okay, one month essentially. Actually, it's 5 weeks to be precise. Okay. Now, how do I know this? Because that's exactly the business I was involved in. Okay. And that guy, he's a minimum wage worker. I mean, he doesn't have to have any kind of education, but he has to have enough training to realize when one of the panels might not be working or there might be some problem. And so you have to call up another, and there's like a lot of people. It's not just like you just install the solar panels and voila. A lot of people confuse the kind of very robust solar energy panels that they use like on campers and shit like that with like the kind of solar panel that is used in a solar energy farm that produces 1 megawatt of electrical energy or more. They tend to confuse those two. They think that it's basically the same thing. It's not. It's night and fucking day, because what a consumer is getting is, number one, on the very high end insofar as materials are concerned. The materials that are used to manufacture those solar panels, they're also incredibly robust. They are designed to be treated badly. The ones that you use on your RV or whatever. Those solar panels, they are incredibly robust, and in order to get that robustness, you have to spend a shit ton of money, a lot of fucking money. Okay, so all of a sudden, I mean, if you're thinking that that kind of panel that you have, that's the kind of panel that is used in industrial electrical generation, it's not. Okay, it's not. Don't confuse the two. And even the kind of solar panel that is installed on the roofs of houses, it's not the same quality. Those on the houses are much, much higher quality and therefore much more expensive. Okay. Okay. So, anyway, that's the cheapest one of the green energies, right? But you start looking at all the other alt energies, and they're all expensive. Now, advanced nuclear is the second most expensive after offshore wind, but there's a big difference. Nuclear energy is absolutely reliable and dependable. It doesn't matter if it's windy or if it's sunny. Nuclear energy is always going to be producing. And that's the great problem with wind, with solar. It's completely undependable. If you want to somehow fix that problem of reliability, you have to get battery storage. And that battery storage is extremely expensive and it degrades very quickly. I'm talking 2 years. 2 years, and you have to really service that battery and really do a lot of effort to maintain that battery. Because, see, it's not like the consumer battery on your fucking phone. See, these are big industrial batteries. They're extremely expensive. You're talking $1,400 per kilowatt. Okay, for that would basically mean, I mean, $1,400 per kilowatt. Imagine that's the kind of battery that you'd need for a house. Okay, essentially. Okay, you'd actually need like two actually to be to be really foolproof. That's a lot of fucking money. That's a big capital investment just to hold on to the energy that's being produced by your solar or wind generator, wind power generating platform, right? And so, because of that, because of the expense of battery storage, because you need it. The point of battery storage is when you have a sunny day, the excess energy gets stored into the battery and it is dispatched to the electrical system when you have an overcast day. And of course, wherever you put your solar farm, you have to make a study as to how many sunny days you have and if it's economically worthwhile. And sometimes it's just simply not, even with batteries. See? So anyway, going back to this thing, let me go back to my thing. Green energy is not cheaper. Okay. There are a lot of different charts that tell you exactly how much each energy system, energy platform, energy process is cheaper. But it depends on your time horizon. It depends on a whole host of factors. And so, you can say that, oh, this energy is cheaper than that other energy. Yes, but it depends if you are investing for 2 years or 20 years. If you're investing for 20 years, for instance, nuclear is always going to be the cheapest. If you're investing for 2 years, solar is always going to be the cheapest. Yeah. And so you have to understand, what are you investing for? What's your time window? See? Okay. So, and I'm not going to get into it right now. Let me just continue with my thing. Green energy is cheaper in general, by the way, only because of exogenous incentives at all levels. Okay. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, for a variety of political reasons and financial reasons and PR reasons and bullshit reasons, everybody is green. And so they have created a whole bunch of benefits for green energy that, if you remove them, would make the entire renewable energy business go bankrupt because it's not economically viable. Now, I can prove this very easily. I don't need charts, and you don't need charts either. And the proof is the following. See, solar panel technology is very old. It's not something that was invented over the last 20 years or some shit like that. It's been perfected and improved upon. Certainly, like batteries have been perfected and improved upon. But see, solar energy has been around for decades. Wind power has been around for centuries. I mean, remember the Dutch windmills, right? Well, they weren't just Dutch; they were all over Europe. They were used to grind wheat and other things. But that kind of energy, wind energy, has been around for centuries. In terms of driving a turbine to produce electrical energy, as soon as electricity came into vogue in the late 19th century, people were thinking, hey, we can use windmills to drive a turbine to create electricity, right? Yes, but wind is inconstant. And that's always been the problem. That's why, in the early 20th century, the mid 20th century, you did not see turbines driving you did not see windmills, rather, driving electrical turbines because they're not economical, they're not reliable. You're burning coal, for instance, to produce electricity. It doesn't matter what the weather's like. You can burn it all fucking day, Yeah, I mean, you burn coal and you might produce like a whole fucking bunch of smog, right? And it might be very noxious, but you're going to have dependable electricity. With a windmill, that's not going to be the case. And that's why nobody developed windmills. But what about hydroelectric? Well, yeah, hydroelectric works. It's fucking A, it works. That's why they built the fucking Hoover Dam. Because hydroelectric works. It's dependable, it's cheap, it's easy, it's done. There are a whole bunch of hydroelectric plants all over the fucking world. There are relatively few places in the world where you can put a hydroelectric dam. I mean, a dam such that it drives a turbine to produce electricity for a nearby region. There are, in this world, there aren't that many such places. But there are places, and they have been built way before this bullshit of green energy and all this shit, which is only about, really 20, 25 years old. Okay. And so you have to understand, just looking back at history, you realize that green energy is not economically viable. It has never been economically viable. The only reason people do it and make money at it, and therefore, quote unquote, make it economically viable, and in quotation marks, is because there have been a lot of incentives, government incentives. government, not quite handouts, but skewing of the playing field in such a way that it benefits those green energy producers. And the intention of these policies was to incentivize green energy producers to improve the technology. And that kind of worked to an extent. But bottom line, see, every futurologist, anybody who is serious about analyzing trends and figuring out the future, all of them agree that the future of energy is fusion, and everything else is just a waste of fucking time. It's just it's just not a real thing. What you need is fusion, because that's the cleanest, that's the most efficient. Fusion is the way to go. It's what powers the sun. Okay, if we can harness that ability, that power, we can do anything. Okay, everything else will be just dotting the i's and crossing the t's kind of situation. But all these current green technologies, solar and wind specifically, and biomass shit. Biomass, oh man, I have a real bone to pick with that shit, because there's been all kinds of biomass projects that are so outlandish, and I saw them. I saw them on the financial end of it, and I'm going to get to that in just a moment. And on the financial end of it, it was just so much bullshit. It was so incredibly inefficient, like that anabaric chamber that I was telling you about, where you have the bacteria eat up the organic refuse and shit out methane, and you burn the methane to create electricity. That's fucking hard. It's not fucking easy. It's very novel and very interesting. And as a thought experiment, it sounds really cool. But as something that's, that you can do easily, that and replicate that easily, and you think to yourself, oh, it's having bacteria eat organic shit. That's really great. It's going to be so easy. Where do you find that organic refuse? It's actually hard. It's really hard to find that amount of organic refuse that you can have these bacteria eat that organic refuse and shit out methane. It's not. I mean, it sounds easy, but when you start looking at the nitty gritty, it's incredibly hard. Okay, and so anyway, moving on. The number one incentive was the invention of the carbon credits. This is the financialization of green energy. Okay, the carbon credits, in my estimation, is the cardinal sin of all this bullshit. Okay, it created this completely corrupt system. And I'm going to explain it right now. You see, the carbon credit system is very simple. A government has a carbon target that it wants to achieve, and it says, okay, we want to achieve this carbon output. Okay, and so what happens is that there are companies that create carbon by way of the industrial processes of whatever sort. Like, say, for instance, just for the sake of argument, a simple example. I have a coal burning power plant. So I produce a lot of fucking coal, a lot of carbon, right? And we want this carbon neutral shit, right? So what do I do? Well, see, the government has dictated that everybody has a carbon allowance, okay? And it varies by government, by region, and it's calculated in all sorts of different ways. But let's just say that you have a carbon credit, okay? Because you are producing electric cars. See? And so you're producing electric cars, and of course, these cars, they don't produce carbon emissions because they're not burning gasoline to drive themselves, right? They're using electricity. And so you, as this producer of electric cars, you have, carbon credits, a lot of them that accumulate, and they accumulate for every car that you sell, right? And so what you do is you turn around and you say to me, I'll sell you my carbon credits, and I buy these carbon offsets. See, I buy your carbon credits, and that covers my excess because I have a carbon cap, right? It doesn't matter the unit in this. Let's say it's 10 tons. I'm just making it up. Say it's 10 tons per year, and I'm actually producing 20 or 25, just to make the math easy. Okay, I have a cap of 10 tons per year and I'm producing 25. Whereas you have the same cap of 10 tons per year, but you're producing zero. So you sell me your 10 tons of carbon credit, right? And I pay you a shit ton of money. Yeah, because it's a market of buying and selling these carbon credits. And so companies are incentivized to create more carbon credits because if they are below their threshold, that's a carbon credit that they can turn around and sell to somebody else. Now, if you're a company that manufactures electric cars, well, then all of your carbon credits are just net profit to you because you just grab them, turn around, and sell them to a polluter such as myself. You see? And so that's how I comply with the government by buying these carbon credits, these carbon offsets. The correct term is carbon offsets. Okay. I buy these carbon offsets. I buy, 15 tons per year or whatever the fuck it is, right? To cover so that I'm in compliance with the law. I don't get into trouble with the government because the government is policing me, especially governments in advanced countries like Canada, the US, especially in Europe and Australia and New Zealand. They're diligent about this shit, right? And so I have to buy these carbon credits. And who pays for this ultimately? Well, ultimately, it's going to be my consumer. See? Because you see, as a carbon producer, okay, I have a coal plant and I want to reduce carbon emissions. And I do whatever is possible because I don't want to have to pay the fucking fine. Because, of course, if I'm above my limit and I don't buy offsets, then I have to pay the government a fine. It's a very hefty fine. So it's worth my while to buy these carbon offsets. You see? And so I have to buy these carbon offsets and I don't want to because it's money out of pocket. So I'm going to do everything in my power to minimize my carbon footprint, right? I mean, that's the rationale. It seems very reasonable, right? But what happens is it incentivizes businesses to create bullshit businesses that have zero emissions, like electric cars. See, electric cars are fundamentally impractical, okay? Uh, and 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 as a business model, they don't pay for themselves. Okay, and I'll get to to electric cars in just a minute. But you see, what happens here also is that say it doesn't really incentivize me as a carbon producer to lower my carbon footprint. Why would I bother? I just buy the fucking credits and pass on the cost to the consumer, which I do. See, and so I have no incentive to lower my carbon footprint. uh, Because you see, it's not just me that is passing along the price hike to the consumer, the amount of money I have to spend on these carbon offsets. All my competitors, the other coal burning power stations, they're also doing the exact same thing, passing on their excess cost to the consumer. The consumer pays, see, but not the actual company. It doesn't really incentivize the company to lower prices. To lower carbon emissions. Excuse me. You see, it's very important that you understand the motivation here. See, if you're able to buy these carbon offsets, and of course, everybody else in your industry is just passing along the excess cost to the consumer, well, then you're set. You don't have to really do anything now, do you? You don't have to lower carbon emissions. And the government can play all kinds of games of every year lowering your carbon credit so that it forces you to get more efficient. But in the end, it doesn't really matter because in the end, see, the really big polluters are not the Western developed countries. The really big polluters worldwide are China and India and Bangladesh. Well, let's not even talk about Bangladesh. It's a fucking nightmare. Okay. Those are the countries that really contribute to greenhouse gases and all that good shit. Okay. But it's not the private enterprise, not at all. See, the private enterprise just passes along the cost to the consumer. Mhm. And also, what happens too, and I'll get to that in just a minute, is a lot of times these businesses, when they realize that the government is really stepping on their toes, they throw money at a lobbying firm, and the government backs off. All the governments back off. See, and that's a key issue. The really polluting businesses, they pay, maybe $500,000 a year to some lobbying firm that's plugged in Washington or London or Brussels, and all those legislatures, they slip in a couple of lines and they give some sort of discount or some sort of exemption to a particular business. And so it's all bullshit. And that's how it works. Okay. I'm not telling you like, this isn't theoretical. This is how it actually works. If you have a business that would have to spend, say, $50 million over the next 2 years to lower their emissions, or they could spend $2 million on some really good lobbyists and get a change in the law, what the fuck do you think that they're going to do? Spend the $50 million over 2 years, which would go right into their profits, or they'd have to pass along that expense to their consumer and potentially have, lower revenue, or perhaps somehow jeopardize the revenue stream, or throw a couple of mil at the lobbying firms and done. Which do you think they're going to do? Spend 50 million or 2 million? Wake up, okay? See, because these democratic regimes, because they have this the whole notion of lobbying, of paid lobbyists who are basically former bureaucrats who are now the paid agents of private enterprise. The private enterprises just hire the lobbying firms, and these former regulators, they know what button to push, what line in the law to add or delete. And it's going to be so subtle, you won't even notice it, you as a regular citizen. But me, as the businessman who has to decide whether to spend $50 million on capital improvements to lower my carbon emissions or $2 million on lobbyists, well, it's going to affect me in a positive way. I'm going to save myself 48 million fucking dollars. So of course I'm going to do that. You see? And that's what's going on. And it encourages corruption. This is the worst part. See? Because the lobbyists become important to the degree that changing the law affects somebody's business. So you as a businessman, you're going to start spending more and more money on lobbyists, increasing the corruption, precisely because it gives you tangible benefits. You see? Because it changes things. You throw a little bit of money and you save a lot of money. So of course you're going to do it. And this, of course, increases the whole notion of corruption throughout the government. And that's what's going on. Okay. So anyway, the carbon credits, it seemed like such a fantastic idea. And there have been a whole bunch of crises in the carbon markets. And it's not really important to talk about it now because you go into it and it's like, talk about inside baseball shit. And you don't really want to worry about that shit because then you get lost in the brambles. And it's important for you who are a non-specialist to sort of like step back and see the overall picture. Carbon credits are the key issue because since all these governments in the Western democracies limit businesses and give them credits and oblige them to trade these credits back and forth, it creates these misincentives. See, like in the case of my coal burning plant, I'm not going to lower emissions. I'm just going to spend money on lobbyists and buy more carbon credits. Like the company that makes electric cars, just because of the carbon credits that it will accrue and be able to sell at an enormous profit. That's capital misallocation. And that's Tesla, by the way. If you've been thinking, oh, it sounds like Tesla. No, it's not sounds like Tesla. It is Tesla. Tesla, Elon Musk, his whole business is a fucking scam. It is. I mean, I like the son of a bitch. He seems like a very clever guy. He seems like a nice guy. He seems on the ball and very honest about a lot of stuff. But bottom line, his business, Tesla, it makes money not because of its fucking cars. It makes money because it sells carbon credits. That's what's going on. That's why it's such a lucrative business, and that's why Tesla is one of the largest companies in the world, which it shouldn't be. It's bigger than all of the other top 10 auto manufacturers combined, which does not make any fucking sense unless you realize it's a scam. It's a very lucrative scam. See? And I've seen all these short sellers get burned time after time after time because these fuckers do not understand the business of Tesla. Tesla's business is not fucking cars. Tesla's business is regulatory arbitrage. I want you to learn that term. Regulatory arbitrage. What is regulatory arbitrage? It is using government regulations to your money-making advantage. Using one regulation and playing it off so that you make a shit ton of money. And the regulatory arbitrage that Tesla is involved in is, if you produce a green energy car, i.e. a zero emission car, you use the regulation to sell something that is fundamentally worthless and that will not create any kind of improvement insofar as the carbon emissions are concerned. You sell this fundamentally worthless thing for a shit ton of fucking money to other companies that pass along this expense to the consumer. Ultimately, the consumer of other products completely unrelated to Tesla, they're the ones who are making Tesla so rich. That's the bottom line. Okay? I mean, understand. And it's all because of this fucking carbon credit system, which seemed like such a great idea, such a great way to solve the emissions. And the thing is, see, the ultimate way, the real way to solve carbon emissions is just for the government to say, look, you got a limit and fuck off if you don't reach that limit. And go business by business and just setting arbitrary limits. And you can hire like scientists and technologists and people who know the business to sort of like set reasonable limits. And there are certain businesses that are going to be polluting inevitably. And you can't say zero emissions, impossible, right? But the way to do it is what happened during the 70s and the 80s. You see, the United States and Western Europe, they were extremely polluted continents, right? North America and Europe, Western Europe at least, and Eastern Europe too, but for other reasons. And what happened was that during the 70s and 80s, the green movement really caught fire, and the government just said, fuck it, we're just going to impose limits. Nixon was the one who implemented the Environmental Protection Agency and the Environmental Protection Act, which not only created the EPA but as an agency, but also created, or imposed rather, limitations on carbon emission and all kinds of other shit. Just putting rules, just saying, no, you can't do it, period. None of this funky dung shit of like carbon credits and trying to use free market techniques to get out of this. No, fuck that. Just diktat. Just say, this is the limit. You don't like it or not, fuck off. This is the limit. And no fancy dancy bullshit with carbon credits. But carbon credits created misincentives because they tried to be clever. Okay, that's basically what happened. Okay? So anyway, so who benefits from all these incentives? And by the way, carbon credits are just the most noticeable and the biggest of all the incentives. There are all kinds of incentives, tax breaks and all the rest of it, tax loopholes, all kinds of ways that companies that pretend to be green can get a lot of money out of it. Now, have you noticed that a lot of companies are pushing this whole, equity and inclusion bullshit, BLM shit, diversity, equity, inclusion, or diversity, inclusion, equity, DIE. That's how it should be fucking called, right? And they also push green shit. Well, because a lot of what happens is a lot of private equity companies, hedge funds, private funds of various sorts, they've succumbed to activist shareholders who demand that these funds only invest in green companies or companies that push diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so these stupid fucking companies, apart from doing all this Black Lives Matter shit and all that bullshit, okay, in order to stay in good with the money people, supplying them with capital, they also go into this green energy shit. Again, to keep these fuckers happy. See, these activist investors, who aren't that many, they've convinced these private equity firms to push this as a priority, as socially responsible bullshit. And so because of it, these private equity firms refuse to invest in companies unless that company has a quote unquote green energy plan or carbon reduction footprint, plan or some shit like that. And so the companies dance to their tune. They need to. And it's not that big of a cost to them because ultimately they're going to pass off the real cost to the fucking consumer. See? It's all bullshit. See? You got to understand that. Now, here's another. Now, Okay, those are the bad incentives. Now let's talk about who benefits from these bad incentives. Well, financial corporations, first of all. I'm talking banks, funds, etc. They benefit. Why? Well, because green energy is capital intensive. You got to spend a lot of fucking money up front. Okay. And so because it is capital intensive and there's a lot of free floating cheap capital around, because over the last, the last 34 years since the 87 crash, and certainly over the last roughly 14 years since the 2007, 2008 meltdown, capital has been all over the fucking place because the Federal Reserve has been keeping interest rates absurdly low and handing out free money like it's going out of style, right? And so there's so much capital floating around. And this capital has to go somewhere. It's on the books of these companies. And so they say, hey, let's stick it into this green energy shit. We'll give these green energy producers lots of capital and we will collect fees. And this is the key issue. See these banks, BlackRock and such. I mean, Goldman Sachs, for instance, is a bank. BlackRock is the fund, right? Well, these guys, they get their cheap capital from the Federal Reserve. And what do? They put it out on the street, of course. They lend it out. I mean, what the fuck good is having money in your hand if you're a bank? You got to put it out on the street. You got to make interest off this fucking money, right? Interest. And of course, when you position capital in any business, you as the bank, you collect a whole bunch of fees. Okay, let me give you an example, a specific example. Say you have a project for $100 million for whatever, okay? Oh, a green energy project. It's going to cost $100 million. You need $100 million capital, right? So you're going to go to an investment bank. Now, what's an investment bank? An investment bank is a bank that connects investment projects with investors. That's why it's called an investment bank, as opposed to a commercial bank or a retail bank. Okay. Now, investment bank, like Goldman Sachs, what are they going to do? Well, to present your project to their clients, they're going to require a fee. See? And they themselves might have capital on hand, or they might have clients that they aggregate and turn into a pool and invest in your project. Doesn't really matter for the sake of this example. What they're going to do is they're going to charge you a fee, and they're going to charge their clients a fee. They're going to charge everybody a fee. That's not going to be a lot, right? It's going to be, half a percentage point here, half a percentage point there. Okay. But all of a sudden it adds up. And the 100 million with fees and all, it's really, 112 million, because roughly 12 is going to go to the investment bank or various entities, law firms and shit like that, right? So you're really going to need 112 million. Yeah, because, it's the 12 million to cover the bank and the lawyers and shit, and another 100 for the actual fucking project, right? But, at the same time, you as an executive, in this company, right? In this project, right? Because it's of course structured as a company, and you in your contract, you have built into it certain bonuses that if the financing comes through, you get $1 million or $1.2 million, right? And so it adds up, and all of a sudden, what you really need is about 120 million. Yeah, because it's not just you; it's also your whole C-suite. Your chief financial officer, your chief planner, whatever the fuck, whatever buddies you got working for you there in your project. So you're gonna need not 100 million. You're gonna wind up needing maybe 120, 125 million. That's how it's gonna fucking work. Okay. And so that 25 million is basically payola for everybody involved. And 100 million goes to the actual project. See? But the company is going to be saddled with that debt of 125 million. It's going to have to service that fucking debt, right? Maybe the debt is structured as equity. Maybe it's just a flat debt or a revolving credit. It doesn't really matter. For the purposes of this conversation, it does not matter. What matters is that the company is now saddled with this $125 million worth of debt. Okay. And they have to pay it. And it's adjustable, of course. That is, if interest rates rise, the company's debt rises. Okay. Which is exceedingly dangerous. See, that's why the Federal Reserve today in the United States is losing control of the dollar. That's why inflation is starting to go out of control, because they can't actually raise rates. Because if they raise rates, there are so many companies that are going to go tits up. they're going to go bankrupt and millions of people unemployed because these companies are so leveraged that if there's any change in the interest rate, they get fucked. They can't service their debt. What happened to Evergrande in out in China? Well, imagine that, but globally, insofar as dollar is concerned. So yeah, because these companies are all over leveraged, and if there is a tiny bit of change in the interest rate, they will get fucked. They will go bankrupt. See, because they all have adjustable monies, right? So anyway, um, it just so frustrates me. Financial companies, to go back to it, who has incentives? Financial companies, they're going to make fees up the wazoo. And think about it, a deal for an investment bank, they're going to make, like in this hypothetical, they're going to make like 12 million, right? Now, from the point of view of the investment bank, positioning that capital, doing all the paperwork, doing all the bullshit to make it happen, it can take as little as 6 weeks from start to finish, from the first time they hear about the project to when they collect their fees and the money has been distributed. As little as 6 weeks. That's not that often. It's more often as not closer to 12 weeks, 90 days. Mm. That's more typical. 90 days to maybe 180 days, but not more than 180 days. And do keep in mind, when they're pushing a project like this, it's not that they're working 24/7 on the project. They got, a lot of irons in the fire. They got 3, 4, 5, 6 other projects going on at the same time. So from their point of view, from a bank's point of view, dude, these businesses, these projects, they're fucking money in the bank, cash money, motherfucker. Yeah, because they can easily skim off at least 7% of whatever capital they're raising. At least 7% and potentially as much as 11, 12% in a period of time of, less than half a year. That's a lot of fucking money, man. That's a lot of fucking money. I mean, you annualize that, and you're talking maybe, as high as 20% per year of money that it's not even yours. You didn't even earn it. It's just money, capital that came your way from the Federal Reserve or from your fucking clients. It's a shit ton of fucking money. It's so fucking lucrative. So of course, financial institutions will have all kinds of incentives to push these projects, because on top of that, see, these green projects, they sound so good, don't they? Oh, what am I doing? Oh, well, I'm helping to finance a offshore wind farm off the coast of Dover in the United Kingdom. Yeah, and we're putting out there. We're going to put out there. There's one farm already there, but we're going to put another. It's going to be 500 million. Yeah, that we're going to be putting out there. 500 million, and I'm really proud of it. And of course, in this cocktail conversation that I'm having, I don't mention the fact that my firm is going to be taking, say, 8% of that 500 million, i.e., 40 million bucks profit. And my personal bonus, because of this fucking deal that is just so much bullshit, is going to be $2-3 million. That's how it's fucking working. Okay. Okay. That's financial side. Politicians, they push this shit because they're green. Yeah. And these NGOs, well, these NGOs, all kinds of NGOs, not just the typical Greenpeace fuckers who are the most unsophisticated of them all. There are all kinds of little NGOs running around all over the fucking place that are all kinds of sophisticated, right? And these guys, oh man, they know how to play the politicians real well, because a lot of them used to be former staffers to these politicians, see? And they're making a shit ton of money. And these NGOs, non-government organizations, they're financed by ideologues, usually very rich people who got their money, either they inherited it or something, they got it somehow or other, but they're usually not the person who actually worked the money. Okay. It's not like Steve Jobs. No, it's like Loren Powell Jobs, his widow. She's the one, or people like her, who put all kinds of money into these NGOs to push this green agenda, because they don't know fucking shit. Okay. And they're fucking retards who are sitting on a boatload of money and don't have, I mean, they have more money than sense, and they spend it on these NGOs that push politicians. And the politicians, of course, well, they're essentially corrupt, see? Because their reelection depends on the money, people. Their future employments and their future opportunities in the private sector depend on how they get along with these NGOs. See? I mean, like, we all talk about George Soros and the Open Democracy Forum and all that bullshit, right? And how that they are fucking over democracy. But there are all kinds of NGOs. And most of the really dangerous ones are so fucking obscure, you'd never even heard of them. And they're crawling all over this green shit because it's ideologues and rich people. There's no worse combination than ideologues and rich people. Hmm? Because the ideologue fills the rich person with all kinds of foolish notions as to what they can do. And the rich person, often is not out of guilt that they have all this money, pursues some agenda that is socially so destructive and corrosive, like this green energy shit. Okay. Instead of pursuing fusion energy, which is the real goal, they pursue wind and shit that is inefficient. It's inefficient. That's the problem with this shit. Okay. Not to mention that it is incredibly toxic. You know, if you break one of these industrial solar panels that are used in solar panel farms, you got all kinds of fucking problems. You got all kinds of because the shit that's in it, it's all poison. Okay. And you got to clean that shit up. And it's not just, it's not like a guy with a broom. Okay. You got to really go there with all kinds of equipment and all kinds of hazmat suits and shit, because a lot of this shit is carcinogenic. Okay. And on top of that, if you don't clean it up right quick, that shit seeps into the groundwater. It can cause all kinds of fucking problems. I mean, it's serious. And people think, oh, solar energy is so clean. Fuck no. I mean, dude, a broken solar panel causes all kinds of environmental problems. I'm not talking about the consumer ones, which again are designed incredibly robustly because you're a fucking consumer. They know that you're going to break it. No, the industrial ones, the ones in those, pretty pictures of those solar farms, right? Those fucking things are a biohazard waiting to happen. And that plastic that covers it on top, okay, that shit is fragile as all get out, man. It's fucking dangerous. But, it just looks good in the picture. It looks great when you show up in a hard hat and a little security emergent, a little yellow vest, right? The high visibility vest, right? And smiling there in your Oakley sunglasses and your hard hat, standing there with your elbow on a solar panel. You feel really great and you're helping the environment and shit. I did that shit. I got a couple of pictures like that, right? Yeah, it felt fucking great until you realize, first of all, when you realize the biohazard that those industrial solar panels actually are, you want to get the fuck away from them. I mean, you feel like physically like shit. I want to get away from this shit because this shit is fucking dangerous. It is. It can fucking kill you. Okay, cancer and all kinds of shit. Okay, so anyway, I'm going off topic as usual, but these NGOs, they push the politicians, and the politicians want to be seen as green. And a lot of these NGOs, they put out like a report card, a green report card and shit. And what? It affects the politician because everybody wants to be green. It's socially acceptable to be green. Back in the 70s, only fucking hippies wanted to be green. But now everybody does. Everybody considers it like virtuous and moral and shit. See, because nobody goes to church anymore. Nobody believes in God and organized religion anymore. And they have to feel a sense of validation in this secular religion that is being constructed. And so everybody has to be fucking green. And that way everybody feels good. And so if you, a regular person, a regular Joe, you want to feel green, and turns out that your local politician gets like a D on his green report card, you're going to say, fuck him. I'm going to, vote for the other guy in the primary or the general election or whatever the fuck. You see? And so the politicians jump through these hoops that the NGOs set up. And of course, vote for all these stupid green projects. And of course, vote when some business needs a little line and a little bit of legislature that will help them out and avoid this bullshit. Yeah, that's how it happens, man. Yeah. Academics, scientists, they're pushing this climate change. Why the fuck you think they are? Because they're getting fucking paid, motherfucker. That's how it works. See, these scientists, right? You're a scientist. You're a climate scientist, say. Okay? You actually know what the fuck you're talking about. Not like some fucking retard who's like I don't know, like a fucking gender studies asshole and talks about and pontificates about fucking, the environment and global warming and all that bullshit, right? So you're an actual scientist. And so you need funding, but your funding is tied up, and you meet up with whoever is giving you the funding, maybe the university or maybe some private enterprise, and say, look, we got to make sure that you're on board with us insofar as climate change is concerned. And so what the fuck are you going to do? You're going to make the chart that looks like a hockey stick, that global warming is definitely coming and it's going to get us all. We're all going to be fucked. Of course you're going to do that so you can get your funding. Because remember, if you're an academic and you're working at a big university and you don't secure your funding, eventually 2, 3, 4 years pass and you don't get funding for your various research projects, i.e. you don't do the research projects you want to do, that university is going to boot your ass. Yeah, of course. See? A university is only going to keep an academic who brings in funding. You as an academic bring in funding by producing results that the person signing the checks wants to see. If it's some NGO, some rich person who's going to be funding your projects, and they insist that they are like green and that you have to show results that are in line with climate change and how going green is so important, then of course you're going to twist around the facts and please your financial master. It's inevitable. And that's what happens. It happens all the fucking time. See? And that's why whenever some academic or scientist claims that climate change is going on, you can't believe him. Because the thing is, see, it could be happening, but the incentives are such that if it's happening or not happening, they will not tell you if it's not happening. They will only tell you that it is happening. Therefore, you can't trust their word. See? If somebody is telling you, I mean, think of it logically. If somebody is telling you A, and you don't know if A is true or false, then you're going to have to figure out a way to discover the truth on your own independently, or realize that you can't trust the person who's claiming this. Yeah. Somebody whose answer will always be A, no matter what the evidence. It could be that the evidence actually does point to A, but if you can't verify this independently, you just have to assume that they're lying. See? And the fact is, see, there's a lot of evidence that points to the fact that the global warming, as traditionally defined, is number one, not happening because of man-made issues, and number two, there are other factors that are changing the global climate that have nothing to do with human beings and easily explain the changes in climate, specifically issues of the sun and the slow changes in the magnetic poles. But anyway, it's not important for this conversation. The important thing is to understand that academics and scientists have an incentive to talk about climate change, claim that it is happening in a catastrophic way. And look, you all listening to me, you're all fucking adults, right? You can remember back 10, 12 years ago when, what was it? The Al Gore movie, the Unpleasant Truth, whatever the fuck it was called. The Al Gore movie. His name, it's chat, help me out here. What was the name of Al Gore's movie? He won a fucking Oscar for that fucking documentary, which is loaded with bullshit. An Unpleasant Truth, an Uncomfortable Truth, whatever the fuck it was called. That fucking movie said that by 2017, Miami would be underwater. 2017 was 5 fucking years ago. Huh? Is Miami underwater? No, it ain't. Okay, so fuck off. All those climate change predictions, all that bullshit, an inconvenient truth. Thank you. All that climate change bullshit, it's bullshit. Okay, it's not as catastrophic as it is being claimed. It's being claimed to be catastrophic to push an agenda because there are incentives in place. Okay, now private companies. Oh well, like I said before, private companies have all the incentive in the world to get into this scam because they can make money on unprofitable businesses like electric car manufacturers. Now, ask yourself this question. Why weren't there any electric cars in the 90s? There's actually only one, Chevrolet's EV1, a very ugly car that was in production or for sale in 1996. Interestingly enough, it was not actually for sale, it was for lease. You could only lease it and you had to return the car. And then Chevrolet did something weird. They went and destroyed all of the iterations of the EV1, which is just weird. You could not legally own an EV1. You could only lease it, and you had to return it. That was part of the contract. And anyway, it's always been like a weird thing. Like, why did they do that, right? And there was a documentary, "Who Killed the Electric Car," that was very prominent. Ed Begley Jr. was on it, and all kinds of people, right? And they were all praising the Chevrolet's EV1. EV1 was a piece of shit. Okay, as a car, it had a very limited range. I think it was like like 100 miles per charge or some shit like that. I mean, it was really just pathetic, right? And not that the cars today have that much better range, but okay, at least as a commuter car, they're serviceable, I suppose, right? But the point, and like what I said before about Tesla, they are incentivized to become carbon credit sellers, carbon offsetters, rather than manufacturing companies. That's why the Tesla as a car has a lot of problems to it, because it does actually. Okay, the Tesla as a car, the sedan, the Model S, the typical Tesla, right? Well, it has all kinds of problems in it, not in terms of quality, in terms of design. Like for instance, the wheel well of the car. It has four wheel wells, of course. Now, it's designed in a way that is extremely inefficient and adds a great deal of weight. And I once saw a documentary on the issue, where a guy who's a specialist in automobiles and like a corporate specialist, he's a guy who evaluates car designs for the big manufacturers, like for Renault and Chevrolet and Ford and whatnot. He was saying that the wheel wells were designed by somebody who doesn't know about cars, probably Elon Musk himself. And he said that the way it's designed is it's over-designed, over-engineered, and it adds a lot of weight in a specific place which shouldn't, especially when you have electric engines. Okay, electric engines at the four axles, right? And so, well, two axles, but you know what I mean, at the four wheels. And so, what the specialist was talking about, this consultant guy was talking about, he was saying that it's a very poorly designed car. Some parts of it are very clever, like the battery and whatnot. Other parts of the actual car, of the vehicle part of it, is very well made, but very poorly designed in terms of efficiency of material usage, in terms of weight. And see, that's the thing. See, Tesla has no real incentive to put the best people who actually know what the fuck they're doing to design their cars, because that's not their fucking business. Their business is not car manufacturing. Their business is selling carbon offsets. And by the way, when they talk about, Tesla's gigafactory of batteries and shit like that, it's more of that carbon offsetting scam. You see? The whole business model is predicated on that. And so you see, you have the richest man in the world whose fortune derives from the car company with the greatest capital value, share price value in the world, in history. And it's fundamentally based on a scam. I mean, you see what I'm talking about here. Because Tesla, the valuation of Tesla as a company and Elon Musk's wealth are not a product of them making a great car. Henry Ford at one time was the richest man in the world. And he was rich because he manufactured the Model T, the most successful car ever made. Because it was, by the way. The Model T was the most successful car ever made. And that's what made Henry Ford rich. But Elon Musk is not rich because he manufactures the best car ever made. Elon Musk is rich because of government incentives that have created a misallocation. No, not a misallocation. They have created a market inefficiency that has allowed Elon Musk to appear to be the richest man in the world when he's really not. Or the most successful businessman when he's really not, because he is the richest man in terms of like net worth. But is it honest? It's not. That's the problem. See? And look, I'm not shitting on Elon Musk. I don't have a problem with the son of a bitch, right? Like I said before, he seems all right. you know, he's making money off a scam. His fortune rests not on like a specific crime that he committed in the past. Henri Balzac famously said that behind every great fortune there is a crime, but he meant in a specific sense, like a murder or a theft or something like that. No, no, no. Tesla, as a company, its valuation depends on an ongoing grift. Hit me with a +1 if you understand what I'm saying, because it's important that you understand here what I'm talking about, what I've been saying so far. Okay, and how long I've been going on? Oh, an hour and a half. Yeah, yeah. So you understand what's going on. See, it's a fucking grift. That's why Tesla is so successful. It's a fortune based on a grift. Okay. I hope that you guys are okay. Great. Thanks. Okay. Um, and Tesla is the most obvious. There are all kinds of companies and all kinds of obscure companies that are making money hand over fist over the exact same thing. Okay. Now, another player rather that benefits from these misincentives, let's call them what they are, misincentives, is China. Because China pollutes like there's no tomorrow, but China manufactures a lot of the green equipment. They are the number one world producer of solar energy panels, right? And half the solar panels that you see, actually two-thirds of them, no, I think it's about three-fifths of them that you see, they're manufactured in China because China manufactures the cheapest solar panels. And so a lot of times, and I'm going to get to that when I discuss my business, a lot of times what you want to do is you want to buy cheap solar panels that are only going to last like 2 to 4 years before they have to be disposed of. And the disposal of them is a fucking nightmare. And why? Because you want to make them as cheap as possible and sell the project to some other guy. And it becomes somebody else's problem. See? Because a lot of these sales, they're with like no clawback clauses or shit like that. Okay. And you're willing to take the financial hit so that you don't have to worry about clawbacks. No, I'll get to it in a second. But I want you to understand that China makes a shit ton of money off of these fucking regulations. And I personally would not be surprised if the Chinese themselves were pushing a lot of this green agenda in the West because it's easy for the Chinese government to have some Chinese agents. I'm not talking like secret agent James Bond shit. I'm talking about like some regular Chinese company and they have somebody in that company who's friendly with the Chinese government or is just basically, their man. And the Chinese national in Europe, in Brussels, in London, or in Canada or the US, they just hire some lobbying firm and push some green law and done. And it benefits China. I wouldn't be surprised that happens at all. I mean, I kind of like expect it. Let me put it this way. I'd be shocked if the Chinese were not running such kind of gay ops. They're definitely doing that. Okay. And the other people who benefit from all these misincentives are rich people. Rich people who, you know, virtue signaling and social acceptability. And like I said before, it comes from the fact that organized religion is gone, and we are slowly figuring out a way to have a secular religion of some sort. A secular religion that glorifies those people who are green, irrespective of the actual costs. See, because that's the thing. Now, the push for green energy, because what I'm really focusing on is green energy, right? Not all green policy per se, but just green energy. Well, green energy policy hurts economies and societies, and it hurts them very badly. And let me give you the specific example of what's going on in Europe right now, right the fuck now. You see, in Europe, right now they are suffering an energy crisis. Like the 1,000 cubic meters of natural gas, the price quote is what, like closing in on $2,000, man, and it used to be half that amount. Okay, I mean, like, it's really it's becoming absurd. And see, what happened in Europe is the following. The Europeans did two things simultaneously that put them in this position. And it wasn't Putin who put them in this position. It was the Europeans, the European bureaucracy of the EU and the bureaucracies of the specific countries. And they did two things. Number one, they pushed green energy, but rather than encouraging green energy, they started shutting down other electrical producers, okay? Specifically nuclear. Now, the Green Energy Consortium hates nuclear for a variety of reasons. Ideologically, because it's nuclear power, okay? And they say that nuclear waste, blah, blah, but nuclear waste is actually very, very small and very easily controlled, okay? There are lots of places where you can toss nuclear waste and it's never going to cause anybody any problem, okay? Lots of caves, lots of places where you can store nuclear waste and know that that shit is going to be sealed tight for the next 50,000 years and you're not going to have to worry about the shit, okay? And so the issue of nuclear energy waste, that's kind of like bullshit. What's really going on is that nuclear energy does not provide any kind of money to any of these players that I said before. It provides no incentives to anybody else because nuclear energy has been around for decades, okay? If hydroelectric had something negative to it, these greenies would be, pinning the tail on that particular donkey. You see? But hydroelectric, it does nothing. But hydroelectric is sort of like inconsequential because you need a very, very specific set of parameters in order to build a dam to have hydroelectric power. And what's interesting is whenever a new place is found to build a dam to create hydroelectric power, the greenies are the first ones who object because of some fucking spotted owl, some fucking endangered seal, whatever the fuck. They come up with some excuse right out of their asses, right out of the fucking woodwork, literally, to say that no, you can't build that dam for hydroelectric power. They are hell bent for leather on making it impossible to do any kind of alternative energy except solar, wind, and biomass. And it's because those three industries represent a lot of money to the various players. It's as simple as that. Okay. Okay. So anyway, the European problem, right? So these fucking idiots, they did two problems, okay? And this has been going on for the last 15 years or so. Number one, they decided to shut down all their electric power plants. And Germany had like a whole bunch. They had like a dozen, and they've been shutting them down one at a time. They have like 3 left, and they're going to be shut down over the next year or so. Now, see, this is all good and fine if you have something to replace this electric generating facilities, right? But they don't. They built a lot of green energy, solar and wind power, but the problem is that those plants, solar and wind power, are inconstant. They are not dependable. Energy, nuclear energy is reliable as fuck. You're going to get fucking the amount of it's going to be dispatched. The amount of electricity you need is going to be dispatched to the grid morning, noon, and night. No change. I mean, you look at the graph and it's going to be flat as a pancake. The energy is always going to be produced exactly when you need it. No problem. And if you need more energy, it's just turning a dial. That's the beauty of electric. It is totally dependable. Okay. And don't give me this bullshit of nuclear accidents and shit like that. Okay. Now, I personally am opposed to nuclear energy long term because if you do have a Chernobyl type situation, which, by the way, the Chernobyl type situation is extremely rare. Okay, that was just a bit of bad luck. If you read about it, you'll find out. But the point, see, that kind of Chernobyl situation is practically impossible if you have people who know what the fuck they're doing. But if you get like BLM bullshit and diversity, equity, inclusion bullshit, and you start hiring a bunch of people who are minorities, but they don't know what the fuck they're doing, then it becomes dangerous. And so my fear is that the diversity, equity, inclusion will reach a point where they start putting incompetent people in sensitive positions in like nuclear energy. And that's my concern. And I'm being very straightforward about it. Okay. I mean, that's my only concern. Because if you have it run by capable people, the fucking shit is bulletproof. Okay. Especially now, because there have been accidents like 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl that taught the nuclear energy business so much. And the new reactors are so safe because of different redundancies and different mechanisms to prevent previous problems. I mean, it's like the aircraft industry. The aircraft industry, they kept learning from all their previous mistakes because the cost of failure was so fucking high and immediate. Okay. Unlike with solar and wind, where the costs of failure is not obvious at first. But anyway, going back to this situation, um, the Europeans started curtailing nuclear, and they certainly started curtailing coal, and all of this was saying that they were going to transition to clean energy. Now, the greenies couldn't simply shut down all the coal plants and all the nuclear plants without replacing it with something because there was not enough solar, not enough areas to put solar energy farms, and not enough points to put all the required wind turbines. So they had to do some sort of transition. And so they hit on natural gas. Now, the problem with natural gas is that, well, yeah, it's a fossil fuel and all the rest of it, but quite apart from that, see, number one, the Europeans depended on Russia because Russia is one of the largest producers and one of the handy producers of natural gas. Okay. And so they ran a pipeline, Nord Stream, from roughly St. Petersburg all the way through under the Baltic Sea to Germany. And they also sent a bunch of gas through Ukrainian pipelines, all the rest of it. And the Russian gas was powering the gas burning stations that produced electricity. Now, as I showed in the previous post, let me go to, oops. Oh, here it is. See, a combustion turbine, like one that's burning gas, it's $710 per kilowatt. That is $710,000 per megawatt. Roughly less than $10 million for a plant just to build it and then burn whatever you need. Okay. I mean, it's cheap. Okay. It's not just cheap in the sense that the raw material, the natural gas, is cheap. It's also the facility you need to build to burn it to generate electricity is cheap to build. It's the cheapest one, as a matter of fact. Okay. So this is all good and fine for the Europeans. But what they did, there were two problems. Number one, they created this dependence on their entire energy portfolio on natural gas. No natural gas, no heating for the people of Europe. Simple as that. That was the first problem. And the second problem is this was really fucking stupid. See, back in 2000, I want to say it was like 2012 or something, 2014, around then. See, the Europeans had entered into a bunch of long-term contracts, gas contracts with the Russians, with Gazprom. Gazprom is the gas monopoly of Russia. Well, not quite monopoly, but for purposes of this conversation, let's just assume that the Russians only have Gazprom. And Gazprom had these long-term contracts with the Europeans. And the spot market at that time, like 2000, it was between 2010 and 2014, roughly. It was substantially lower than these long-term contracts because these long-term contracts are priced on the basis of oil. Okay. And so it's not that it's a fixed price throughout the entire period. It's a fixed price based on oil and other parameters. And it's a very complicated formula and it's bespoke. It's each contract for each formula for each contract. That's a whole hassle. It's not important. The upshot, the important point is to realize that, see, the Europeans, their long-term contracts were fucking them over. Now, the great thing about a long-term contract is that you are the priority customer. Okay. You will get your gas no matter what. Okay. And that's the whole point of a long-term contract, right? But the Europeans, they were seeing these spot prices that were lower. And they were like saying, fuck this shit. Let's get out of these long-term contracts and get into the spot market. And so the Europeans, one at a time, the European countries started exiting their long-term contracts with Gazprom. And they also started exiting their long-term contracts with Gazprom on the mistaken belief that they didn't want to be beholden to Russia. Okay? That they didn't want to give Russia the geopolitical leverage. Okay, fine. And so they went into these short-term contracts. Little by little, they start peeling away and letting these long-term contracts lapse because you can't get out of a long-term contract just like lickety-split. The only real way, practical way to get out of a long-term gas contract is to let it lapse. It gets to the end of of the contract period and you just don't renew it. That's what the Europeans started doing and going into the spot market. And what happened was that The very fact that all these players started going into the spot market drove the spot prices up enormously. Okay. And the people who had long-term contracts, they were sitting pretty. They were doing pretty good. Yeah. But the people with the spot market prices going into the spot market and buying whatever is available, what happens is that, see, supply and demand. If there's a lot of supply in the spot market, then the price is low. But if there is very little inventory in the spot market, or the same inventory but a lot more buyers, the price goes naturally up. And that's what fucking happened. These fucking moron Europeans shot themselves in the foot by the very fact of them lapsing their long-term contracts. They drove up the spot market price. And now the Russians really have them on the hook, because the Russians have always been very, very careful about this. They always fulfill their long-term contracts. They will kill their own mother to fulfill those contracts, because Putin and the Russians in general realize that so long as they fulfill their long-term contracts, nobody can say anything to them, right? But they don't have to put their inventory in the spot market. Their excess inventory of gas, they don't have to sell in the spot market. It's theirs. They can sell wherever the fuck they want. And if they want to turn around and sell it to the Chinese instead, what the fuck are the Europeans going to do? Huh? It's a spot market. Yeah. It's like you complaining because you go on Craigslist and you're looking for a 66 Camaro and you don't find it. Is it the problem of the seller? No, it's the problem that, you went on the spot market, Craigslist in this case, and what you wanted is not available. Or it is available, but there are so many buyers that the price is more than you can afford, or at least more than you can comfortably afford, or more than you would want to afford. But what happens when you need to buy this gas because you have to give your citizens electricity so that they have fucking heating for the fucking winter? You see, the Europeans did this all on their own. They decided that they were going to go green. And so they started closing down their coal burning facilities, closing down their nuclear facilities, hoping against hope that the green energy technology would catch up and fill the gap. And it didn't. And now they really depend on Russian natural gas, and they don't have any long-term contracts with the Russians. The Europeans this winter, they're going to go cold. And if you who are European, you're listening to me, you're going to start having rolling blackouts come February. I'm not kidding. Okay. If you're in the UK and listening to me, you have already heard that a lot of electrical companies in the UK have started going bankrupt, because in the UK, what's going on is that the price of electricity is going up for the same reasons I've mentioned. But in the UK, the retail energy companies that sell to the consumer have a price cap. And of course, if you as a company are selling something at a loss, eventually you're going to go bankrupt. Eventually, you're going to have to shut down. And that's what's happened to UK electrical companies. Okay. So all of Europe is fucked. And they did it all themselves because of this green energy shit, the misincentives. See? Because all of these, I've talked about how banks have all kinds of incentives to lend money to these green energy projects. But also, the green energy projects are getting all kinds of benefits, tax breaks, tax incentives from the governments. And so all these projects are, on the pipeline, right? But they cannot cover the energy needs of the country because they are so inconsistent. In winter, for whatever reason, and somebody once explained it to me, and it was a long, fucking complicated thing. There's all kinds of language I didn't even fucking understand. But bottom line, during the winter in Europe, there isn't that much wind, not constant wind like during the spring and summer. And right in the winter, when it's fucking coldest, that's when you need the most electricity now, don't you? Yeah, in the summertime, in Europe, you don't even need electricity for the AC because it doesn't get that fucking hot in Northern Europe, huh? But in fucking winter, it gets cold as a witch's tit now, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. And that's when there isn't enough wind to power these fucking wind turbines. See? These incredibly expensive wind turbines, which I showed you before, $6,000 for the kilowatt, $6 million for the megawatt. Hmm? I mean, you want to, run just a few hundred houses, It's going to cost you all kinds of money, and not to mention the repairs and maintenance of that shit. You know, these fucking morons did it all to themselves, man. They deserve the coal that they're going to get, right? But anyway, yeah, Europeans. I outlined Europe's current energy crisis, and this shit, it's going to get fucking horrible. And the Europeans are going to have to go and beg to the Russians to give them gas. See, they're going to have to beg them because the Russians, they are under no contractual obligation to sell them gas on the spot market. And a lot of people who think that they know better but don't know shit say that, oh, well, the Americans can sell them, liquefied natural gas. Well, there are these ships. You've probably seen them. They're very spectacular. It looks like a oil tanker ship, but it has like 3 or 4 or even 5 domes, right? Those domes, they're basically giant balls filled with um, natural gas under pressure. Mhm. That's why they're shaped as balls, right? Uh, because if they were shaped in any other way, they deform and eventually pop or leak, right? And so they're shaped as balls. They're filled with natural gas under compression, liquefied natural gas, because of course a gas, when you subject it to enough pressure, it becomes liquid. And this shit is transported from the United States via ship to Europe. Now, obviously, it's incredibly fucking expensive. Okay. I think what it is, the equivalent is like, it's like $3,000 per 1,000 cubic meters. Okay. I mean, it's substantially more expensive than the current spot market price. I mean, it's just not economical. Okay. It's not economical at all. And coupled to the fact that there aren't enough ships to carry all of the natural gas that European consumers would need if hypothetically they were to cut off all Russian gas. See, the Europeans, because of their stupid green energy policy, created the conditions where they depend totally on the Russians for their electricity and cannot go to war or even sanction Russia. See, because of their own stupidity, because of their own stupid green energy policy. If they'd kept their nuclear energy plants, and especially the Germans, if they'd increased those nuclear energy power plants, they could be almost energy independent. They'd need natural gas just for like cooking and a few, electric generating stations, and that'd be it. See, shit that they could probably get from Turkey. Hmm? Serious. The Germans and the Europeans in general, they fuck themselves all on their own by pursuing this green energy bullshit. Okay, so that's how green energy has hurt Europe. Green energies are less efficient and less reliable. This is a fact. This is just a plain fact. It's there's no doubt about it. Okay, it's just, yeah, green energies are a complete misallocation of capital, because they really are. All this money going into these green energy projects that do not produce enough electricity or consistent energy generation. This is the issue. Nuclear is far more efficient and dependable, but it is a direct competitor to newfangled green technologies that are inefficient and or pollute more in the long run. Because like I said before, solar and wind pollute a lot. It's just, well, people don't want to see it. See, and you guys, you've seen this over the past couple of years with the whole COVID shit, that people don't want to see the truth. Hmm? They don't want to see the truth. They don't want the bad news. They want to hear bullshit. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, here we're going to come to the end, and I'm going to tell you my boomer tale of my solar energy, my solar power station business. Now, I'm not going to mention the name of the company, okay? Because it still exists, at least in legal form, and it's been collapsed. And let me tell you the story. Okay, I've never been involved in this fucking business. I have no clue at all about the energy business, right? But like in 2013, my wife was on some Facebook page of new mothers and shit like that. And there was this American woman who was married to a Chilean guy, and the Chilean guy had gone to Cornell. And my wife, somehow we wound up going to like a get together of this Facebook group. Okay. And we went to some restaurant, with new babies and shit. It's new mothers shit, right? And they tips about how to handle the baby and all that good shit, right? And so we went. I was like, fine. I'm gonna go to this fucking thing. Why not? And I met the husband of this woman, right? Of this friend of my wife's. And this guy, he's a Chilean guy. He'd gone to Cornell, and we wind up talking in English. The guy had lived in the States as long as I had. He spoke English like I do, and he'd gone to Cornell, which is an Ivy League school. And us Ivy Leaguers, we're all fucking snobs, and that's a fact. And so we're like, oh, okay, we're on the same page, right? And he tells me that he's in the solar energy business. I don't fucking know shit about it. He starts telling me about it. He has this business idea, okay? And long story short, I realized that I know a lot of people who are in the energy business. A lot of people in the energy business. And see, it was really weird because I started like doing like a list of people I knew who might be able to help me out with this guy and this business. And lo and behold, I had like 10 people. Okay. And I thought at the time, man, it must be incredibly lucky. At the time, that's what I thought. But then retrospectively, later, I realized, no, 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 no. What was going on, and this is a parentheses to help you insofar as businesses are concerned. See, I knew a whole bunch of people who could help me or point me in the right direction or put me in touch with the right people because I had a very wide circle of acquaintances. At that time, I'd gone out of my way for various reasons to have a very, very wide circle of acquaintances. And I knew all kinds of people in all kinds of different venues, and I kept up all of these relationships. I had lists of people that I'd give a call, every month or every 2 months. And I just called them up to say, hi, how's it going? What are you up to? That kind of like catch up, kind of like keep them on my radar and keep myself on their radar kind of thing. And I had a call list of like about 150 people, you know, and it was just a bunch of different people that I just accumulated. Mhm. And it turned out that from those 150 people, I quickly whittled it down to about 10 people. Actually, it was like 8 people who could help me out. And those 8 people pointed me towards another couple of dozen people who were either in the energy business or in the energy bureaucracy of Chile, of the government bureaucracy, of course, or knew about solar and all this shit. And long story short, I started organizing a company based on this guy's idea because he had a really good idea, but he didn't know how to execute it and he didn't know how to put together the capital. Now, I did know how to put together the capital, get the money for this fucking project, at least the initial money, because when I'd been doing movies, the financing of the movies is the hard part, of course. And it taken me a long fucking time to figure out how to finance my pictures. And when I finally did, that skill set of raising capital and figuring out how to do it, well, that was the real bonus from the whole film business. And so I applied that skill set to this situation. And this guy, I told him, look, you can work with me or I'll work on my own. Either way, I'm going to move forward with this because your idea is great, but it's not something that you could trademark or patent, right? It's not copywritten anywhere. You can't copyright it. Okay. And so he's like, okay. So we worked together and I put together a team. And before you know it, we're in front of a head of corporate finance of some investment banks. And we're putting this together and we get some seed money. We get a couple of million to get this shit started. And the basic project was very, very simple. The basic project was, see, in Chile, the regulatory framework was such that, see, if you had I'm trying to remember the numbers. If you had a power station up to 3 megawatts, you could dispatch the energy for free. You didn't have to pay for the dispatch fees to the grid, and you didn't have to pay environmental impact statements or some environmental impact fee, and a couple of other things that added up that were a lot of money, right? If it was up to 3 megawatts. If it was between 3 megawatts and 20 megawatts, you had to pay like a very convoluted and expensive environmental impact statement. And after 20 megawatts, you had to pay the environmental impact statement and also, pay for the dispatch fees to dispatch the energy that you produced into the grid, right? And so what happened was that this guy had figured out that, these rules, that because of these rules, see, if you had small solar power stations of under 3 megawatts, right? They could be all spread out. Yeah, if they were not contiguous, you could um, basically do regulatory arbitrage. Okay, use the rules to your advantage, because see, electrical energy production, insofar as solar is concerned, is linear. You add, 1% of more solar panels, you're going to get 1% more energy. See, whereas with a coal burning station or any other fossil fuel burning station, you can't grow it. It's fixed. It's going to be, 5 megawatts or 70 megawatts, whatever the size of it, it's going to be fixed. Okay. And so you can't grow it. Okay. It's inelastic in that way. And so what this guy figured out was that, see, if you have these 3 megawatt stations, so long as they're not the same facility, they're separate facilities, even though they are owned by the same company, you can have as many as you want. And he had been thinking of like setting up one. And, the real money is when you go big, see, because the effort to raising money for a $5 million project is just as hard as raising money for a $50 million project. But the difference, of course, is, it's 10 times bigger. It's the same amount of effort, but 10 times more money. And therefore, 10 times more money for your fee, for your bonus, or whatever you want to call it, the money that you're going to get if this is successful, right? And so, he was thinking about it the wrong way. He was thinking, oh, we can do like one for 3 megawatts, and what he wanted to do was to do one for 1 megawatt and then one for 3 megawatts. And I was like, fuck that. I just propose that we do 33 installations for a total of 100 megawatts. And we created this project. And, I didn't know the fuck all about any of this shit. I just picked it up along the way. And as I picked it up, at first I was like all psyched about it, because I thought, man, I'm doing green energy shit. This is all great. I go to cocktail parties, man, and talk about this shit, and people's eyes would just like go big like saucers. And like, oh man, you're so fucking cool. Yeah, I was fucking cool, right? That's how I felt at first. But then I started like realizing that it was all just a bunch of bullshit. Okay. I started realizing that, the solar energy panels, right? They were like German manufacturer. The fucking things were guaranteed to last like 10 years. And the average lifespan was like between 12 and 15. But then the Chinese manufacturers, they'd last 2 years, no fucking guarantee, or like a year guarantee or something pathetic like that. Pieces of shit, right? But a lot cheaper. So your margins would be a lot better, And of course, you're designing this business project to sell it to some other fucking loser, right? And you're going to put a no clawback clause, which is basically a clawback clause is if something happens with the subsequent owner can get the money from you, the previous owner, okay? Because it's not his fault, it's your fault, right? But if you put a no clawback clause, then, once the guy owns it, it's his fucking problem, no matter what the fuck happens, okay? And a lots of times, more clever people will realize that this clause is in there, and they'll say, "Hey, give me a discount for this," okay? And you'll give them a discount of something or other, right? But no more responsibility. You sold it and you forgot it, and you can move on to something else, right? So, yeah, this whole thing was just going to be like one big scam. I started to realize. See, the patina of respectability, of green energy, and all this good shit. But ultimately, any problem, any fuck up, it's going to be somebody else's problem, not mine. And the whole point of this shit is to sell it, okay? To set up this project and to sell it as quickly as possible, because you don't actually even want to be part of the building of this fucking shit, okay? Of course not. Because then you're going to be building this shit and it's all going to be all kinds of complicated. No, you want to figure out the business plan, have the business plan in shape, raise some initial startup capital to work on this shit. I kicked in some of my own money. I made a boatload of cash on this fucking thing, right? And eventually find a big buyer with deep pockets. Okay. Now there was a buyer in China, and met him in London. Met them. They went a whole committee of Chinese people. Okay. I'd never done business with Chinese people before. Now, when you deal with Chinese people, see, you go to some business meeting that's like for real, they're serious about it. See, they require that you show up with all the people that connected you to them. And this is a very interesting business practice. And I think it's very healthy, by the way. See, you have to show up with the people who introduced you to the person who introduced you to them. See? It's like the game of Kevin Bacon, 6 Degrees of Separation. You know how many other actors have worked with him, right? Well, it's basically the same thing. The Chinese want to be in the room in the first in the second meeting when they've already decided to pull the trigger. When you've presented the thing and they're like, okay, let's move forward. On like the second or third meeting, they insist on having in the room all the degrees of separation between you and them, so that they can ascertain, oh yeah, that guy, that guy, that guy. Okay, now we move forward. It was really interesting. Yeah, we had that meeting, and the project moved forward, and ultimately they bought it off us, the whole fucking thing. And we had sites that had been, we had leases on different sites that were gonna, we had the lease contracts for some, we had lease agreements for others, we were in negotiations with others, and so forth. And we were all getting this project lined up, right? And they bought it off us. Now, why did they buy it off us? Well, it was really fucking interesting. See, their whole deal is that, see, the company that bought it off us was a Chinese company, nominally private, but it was controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. And see, what this company was going to do, they were going to buy our project and use our project to buy Chinese solar panels. And so Chinese money would flow back to China. See, no money would actually be in Chile. The solar panels would be delivered to Chile and installed, and it would be like a solar energy project, right? But the money would remain in China. It would never leave. This is called vendor financing, by the way. Okay, well, where the vendor essentially finances the money for the person who manufactures the thing. See, and so by doing this, they had acquired, the Chinese had acquired a solar energy generation power station, right? In this very clever way that represented potentially a lot of money, and they'd paid their own people for the solar panels. Now, of course, what happened was the fucking solar panels started breaking down. It started breaking down really fucking soon. Last I heard, it was like a whole environmental problem. Yeah. But no clawback. So it became the Chinese problem. And the Chinese eventually sort of like washed their hands of the whole fucking thing, paid off whoever they had to pay off, and pulled up stakes, and that was that. And nothing happened. Ultimately. I don't think any electricity was ever generated. I think that they sort of like sort of built up one of these 3 megawatt stations, right? In the end, nothing happened. Okay. Me personally, I got paid. Fuck yeah, I got paid. Fucking A. I mean, this 99 megawatt project, the whole thing was running at what was it, 157 million? That was going to be the nominal price for the whole fucking project, right? Yeah, 157 million. I got my slice. Fucking A, I got. Yeah. And others who got their slices, I don't know. Ask them. But I got my slice. Okay. And as I was going through this process, I felt dirtier and dirtier every fucking day because it was just all kinds of bullshit. It was just really just all kinds of bullshit. And nobody gave a fuck about, green energy or shit like that. It was just gaming the system to make money. Ultimately, that's what it was all about. And the environmental impact of those fucking panels. That's the thing that really bothers me. We hit on a really clever approach insofar as where to put a lot of these panels. We put them in industrial areas. Yeah, because it turns out, see, in Chile, basically for earthquakes, construction is extremely solid. Okay, you have to build like reinforced concrete, everything, rebar all the way, because in Chile we have a major earthquake every 15 to 25 years. a major earthquake. I've lived through 2 of them. In '85, it was a 7.5 earthquake, followed immediately after, like 5 minutes later, by a 7.7 earthquake. And they lasted like, Jesus fucking Christ, they lasted like 5 minutes or something. It scared the shit out of me. And then in 2010, there was the 8.8 earthquake, which I felt in Santiago as an 8.5, but I was on the 15th floor of my apartment. I'm going to tell you something, man. When that building moved, holy fucking shit, it was scary. But the point of this, the reason I'm mentioning all this shit, all the buildings are made of rebar. They have to because of the earthquakes, or else they'd all fall. Okay. As happens in other countries that do not have experience with regular earthquakes, when they have a big one, thousands and thousands of people die. In Chile, relatively few people die. I mean, like in the 2010 earthquake, something like 500 people died, and most of them because of the tsunami. Okay. Because they were caught near the shore and they got swept away. Okay. But in cities, the number one killer was heart attacks. Yeah. People got so shocked by the fucking earthquake that, they dropped dead of a heart attack. Poor bastards. But that goes to show how good the construction is in Chile. And because of this, we could put solar panels on the rooftops of a lot of buildings in industrial areas where, it wasn't like a real issue. And it was a very clever idea. And the environmental impact in those areas was practically zero, because any problem with a broken solar panel, it would be on the rooftop and you'd be able to clean it relatively easily, compared to if it's like in the dirt, right? In the country, someplace like that. So anyway, I'm going off point. The point is that, see, I started realizing early on that the solar panels were like a real environmental hazard. And it was really interesting. The government regulators in Chile, they were almost apologetic about the fact that solar panels were such a environmental liability. They didn't want it to be, but they knew it was. And so they were like, yeah, just be careful that you don't break them. And of course, when you install, thousands of these fucking panels, it's inevitable that some of them are going to break. It's just the law of averages. And it causes all kinds of environmental havoc. Cleaning that shit is not easy. And you think it is. You think it's just, little sprinklings of metallic blue powder. Big deal. How hard can it fucking be? It's fucking a hassle, man. So anyway, as I got more into the business, I got really disillusioned. Now, there was a friend called Jose. I'll call him Jose. That's not his real name. And he was a friend. And he saw all kinds of things. I did not see any of this that I'm about to say. I had no experience whatsoever with what I'm going to relate about what Jose saw, not me. I did not see this. Okay? Are we really fucking clear? And anybody who claims that I did see it or I had anything to do with what I'm about to say, I'm going to call him a liar, and I'm going to sue him for defamation or libel or whatever the applicable law. Okay? And I have the money to do it. So don't fuck with me. Don't, accuse me of some bullshit that I never would have done in a million years. This is just something I heard from this guy, Jose, who had a similar project to mine. And it was, working in a similar time frame, and who told me some stories. Oh boy. Jose told me the story of one time, and I have absolutely no reason to doubt him because his word is unimpeachable as far as I'm concerned. One time, Jose and his team were out scouting some location to put solar panels, right? And they found some location, the owner of the place, and everything was hunky-dory. But what happened was that some very famous NGO, you know the name of it, an environmental group. The local, they got wind of this, and they said that they would protest it. They were going to protest it because they thought that putting the solar panels would hurt the environment and hurt the aesthetic integrity of the area. Okay, this is out in the fucking boonies, out in the country, in this area that was really sunny most of the time. It was like a microclimate, really sunny most of the time. It was outside of a town called Olmue. And this NGO said that he would personally see to it that there was all kinds of demonstrations. And Jose went to this town, and talked to the guy, with a couple of other guys on the project, right? And this official, this head of the local chapter of this NGO, said, you know, basically he hinted that he needed a new car, and the new car was going to cost $40,000. And well, Jose, who was who had quite the education as of late, he'd found out all kinds of stuff about corruption and whatnot. He'd realized that the NGO's price was this fucking car. So they bought the guy the car. Jose told me later that the hard part was figuring out a way to siphon the money in such a way that it was not traceable, because in Chile, uh, um, money transfers over a few $1,000s are registered. The tax authority is very careful about that. It's not so much that they're trying to stamp out illegality; they just want to make sure that everybody pays the tax that they're owed, right? And so moving the money around so that they could get the car and get the keys into this guy's hand, that took some creativity, right? That was the hardest part. It wasn't getting the fucking money, because 40 grand for a project like this was peanuts. But yeah, they finally got the guy the car, and the guy not only endorsed the project with the local governance, he actually put us in touch with a couple of other people who could provide us with suitable sites. Although we did have to kick him another couple of grand, another 10 grand rather, to excuse me, Jose had to send them. I don't know why I'm talking in the first person about this, because I'm not Jose. But this guy got another 20 grand, 10 grand for each of the other additional sites that he steered us to, and convinced the local landowner, who was none too clever, to give us lease guarantees for these lands for this thing. Yeah. Not us. I mean, Jose. I had nothing to do with this. Oh, okay. And then there's another situation where Jose went to the Congress in Chile. He'd never gone to the Congress before. Okay. And for some ungodly reason, it's out on the fucking coast and you have to go out there. It's a whole hassle. But anyway, he went out there with his team, and they talked to some lawmakers. And the lawmaker, passed some law for Jose and his project. Mm-hmm. Passed that law, and very accommodating. It was a very minor law of like an addendum to the regulation. But because of it, this specific project, because it was green, because it was solar, well, all of a sudden it had a tax benefit. Long story short, for all intents and purposes, the taxation on the project dropped to 40% of what it should have been. Yeah. Yeah. Because there would be like tax incentives for this green energy project. Now, these tax incentives were never exercised, of course, because this project never actually happened. But what did happen was that because of this, Jose's project, because Jose's project also, like mine, never happened, but Jose's project became that much more valuable to a potential buyer because of this tax discount. See? Yeah. Yeah, that's how it happened. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's interesting also is that Jose, when he would go to these banks to set up the capital, they all knew how corrupt the whole fucking thing was. They just smirked. Smirked and said, "Okay, Jose, let's make it happen." Yeah, interesting. What's interesting in my experience, this is not Jose, this is me. Okay, when I was dealing with China, the Chinese, right? They were very aggressive about about only Chinese manufacturers. And at first I was like, sure, of course, they're Chinese money and they want to make sure that they take care of some of the people back home. But then I realized that it was from the get-go. This thing that they were doing this all over the fucking place. This energy company, Chinese energy company, was deliberately looking for projects, solar energy projects, so they could kick back money to the solar energy panel producer back in China. See? And what was interesting from the Chinese perspective, see, they throw money at the locals, like in this case, me and my team. They throw money at us. And, they say, well, the Chinese lost money. Well, no, because see, they would make the whole thing based on debt, and then they'd write off the debt because it didn't happen and it failed, right? And so what happened was that though money went to the solar panel manufacturer, mm, and the tax write-off went to the Chinese energy company, and they could carry that loss and kick it forward insofar as their taxes were concerned on their profitable energy ventures. See? So even though they'd had money out of pocket, since it was all structured as debt and the debt was written off, they still came out ahead. Long term, they came out ahead. It was just, that was the whole thing. The whole thing was just a fucking scam. Yeah. Really fucking ugly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And when I was done with it, I have to admit I felt ashamed. I mean, if we're being real honest, and let me here I'm winding down in my presentation, so I'll just oh, have you guys been like seeing my face the whole time that I've been here? You didn't see my my slideshow? Hit me with a +1 if you saw the slideshow, and hit me with a 0 if you've been seeing my face all this time. Oh well. Anyway, last 5 minutes. Okay, well, I don't know what happened, but anyway, it's not important. What's important is to tell you the honest truth, I feel ashamed of it, to tell you the truth, of the whole energy business that I was involved in, because it was so it was such a scam. That's the thing. Bottom line, it was just such a fucking scam. Mhm. And I did well for myself, and good on me. But you feel like a fucking pig, man. Yeah. You feel like you're doing something. Well, no, it's not that you feel that you're doing something wrong. You are doing something wrong. You are playing with rules to appear to be productive, but you're not actually being productive. Bottom line, Chile's energy situation did not change one iota. Some people in Chile made some money. Some people in China did well insofar as their bosses were concerned. Nothing progressed at all. It was just a waste of time, It was worse than a failure in many ways, because it was fundamentally a scam. And I think that that's the thing that bothered me the most. And when I started looking into the whole climate change shit, that's when I realized it was really depressing. Because see, a few weeks ago, I did one on the climate change numbers, and the European numbers of climate change are basically saying that climate change isn't happening. And I could have told you that, like, I don't know, back in 2014 or whatever, whenever I was neck deep in this shit. Bottom line, the climate change propaganda is just bullshit to push green energy that benefits a lot of people. It's a fucking scam. Okay. And a lot of times they show all kinds of stuff that is really like mimetic like in meme, right? Like, for instance, they'll show that picture of like some glacier, like from 50 years ago, and now it's gone, right? And you'll say, holy shit, climate change, global warming. Yeah. But it doesn't show you that other canyon or valley or whatever the fuck that 50 years ago didn't have a fucking glacier and now does. Don't show you that. Of course not. I mean, and bottom line, and this is something that I learned from a scientist when I was working on this thing. See, the scientist told me that the sun influences our weather far more than anything that we human beings do. Number one, and number two, see, the kind of pollution that we're talking about that really affects the climate That's usually like places like India or China where it's so thick that you can hardly breathe. Okay. As these gases get dissipated through the atmosphere, okay, they become less and less of an issue. Right? And they do. And this notion that human beings, what's it called? Whole centric or man made, whatever it's called, I forget the adjective, man made climate change based on the emissions, right? It's just not true. It's bottom line, it's not true. Okay. But, and I remember growing up in the 70s when they would talk about planet Snowball Earth, that the Earth was cooling. They were getting hysterical about it. It was on the cover of fucking Time magazine. Okay. And now we see this whole COVID hysteria. And we realize that there is a particular segment of the population that will throw a hissy fit about whatever fucking thing because they are sure that the earth is ending. It's a weird kind of catastrophism. Okay. It's either the earth is cooling or the earth is warming or the COVID is going to get you, all kinds of bullshit. Climate change is propaganda and it is used very deliberately and consciously by people trying to make money off this bullshit. And as I've explained a little bit here, it's a giant scam. It is an environment, it's not a specific, it's not like a single grift that's happening insofar as green energy is concerned. It's rather like an environment has been created where grifters can come and make a lot of money. And I think that that's what fundamentally depressed me because as I got to know more people in the energy business and in the renewable energy business, and people in finance and people lawyers, people who knew shitloads of all this shit, right? People who were involved in the whole carbon credit shit, right? I started realizing that all of them were basically corrupt. They were corrupt people. And you want to call them sociopaths? Fine, call them that. Medicalize them if you want to. But bottom line, that's the thing that really depressed the fuck out of me. These people were all fundamentally corrupt. Because like in every industry, there's like a flavor to the people. Okay. Like in movies, right? It's highly ambitious people and basically two kinds of people. A small minority of guys who want to be, well, no, I was going to say something, but let me correct that. There Number one, everybody in the movie business loves movies, and they can talk to you for hours about movies, and they know movies real fucking well. Okay, even the biggest fucking dickhead in the movie business loves movies and knows them, and talks about them, and wants to make a great movie because no matter how big of a scumbag, you know, I mean, you could be talking to the lowliest Z movie producer, right, and he still wants to make a great movie. And he can tell you about that time he saw some movie that really, really rocked his world. Okay. The lowest guy in the movie business has such an experience and can tell you in detail. Okay. I mean, you might think that he's fucking scum, and he might be scum, complete scum, but he has that little grain of integrity. You know what I mean? And he's the guy who really wants to be a part of something great, even if he's reduced to doing Z movies and pornos in the valley or some shit like that. You know what I mean? But in the renewable energy business, all the people are scumbags. Even the ones who seem, pretty sharp and pretty decent, because the whole thing is a scam. See? And in the movie business, see, there are assholes and sons of bitches and guys who will fuck you over. Sure. There are guys in the movie business, but it's much more prevalent in the fashion business, who are in the business just because they want to fuck pretty girls. Okay. And there are a lot of guys, a lot of people in the movie business who want to be in the movie business because they want to be famous. Okay. And you can think of these motives as very low motives, right? Quite apart from the fact that everybody wants to make money. But at their core, there's something truly noble about people in the movie business. At the core, there's something fundamentally noble in the grottiest and most corrupt business of them all, which is probably the music business, right? At least back when the when the what you call the record labels had some actual sway, the music business was fucking horrible, corrupt, and disgusting, and all the rest of it. But even those guys, they would listen to some band, they like, oh, man, that's really good, and they actually cared, okay, about good music. I mean, sometimes they had to push slop because slop sells, but they could always appreciate, a Miles Davis and Eddie Van Halen or something. I was actually recently reading Noel Monk's autobiography of his time as the manager of Van Halen. And, he was talking about payola and all kinds of shit that he was doing and all that shit that he had to clean up for. But he could still appreciate that Eddie Van Halen was a great guitar player and why he was a great guitar player. And, all kinds of interesting shit like that, right? Because fundamentally, there was, even in these corrupt businesses or seemingly corrupt businesses, the people who are involved, they actually know that there's something true there. Because you see a great movie like Lawrence of Arabia, like The Great Escape, like Apocalypse Now, like The Black Stallion, like The Godfather, like Catch Me If You Can, and there's some fundamentally, there's a fundamental truth to it, okay? And same in the music business, and same in a lot of businesses. But in the green energy business, there's nothing noble. As you get to know the business more and more, you realize it's all facade, all corrupt, all bullshit. It's a big lie. And you start to realize that the reason you're involved in it is, one, to make money, because you're involved in every business to make money, number one. But number two, so you can pretend to people who don't know how virtuous you are. But you're pretending. It's real fucking ugly. And I'm telling you, that's the truth. That's the truth of the green energy business. It's fundamentally corrupt, virtue signaling bullshit that hurts societies and economies. And that is the truth. Okay, I'm going to take some questions. Let me get sorted out here. I'm not gonna do questions for very long because I'm sort of like wiped out. Hit me. I just posted the link in chat. Hit me with questions about this. Anything you want to talk about, that's fine. But I'm not going to do a lot of Q&A. I'm going to do like about half an hour because, to tell you the truth, I'm really like wiped out. So wait for people to pop in. Hey, St. John. Wait for a couple of other people to show up. Well, I'll just bring in St. John. Hey, St. John, how's it going?
How you going? Good, Gonzalo. I have a question and then just a general comment. The question is, can you describe in a little bit more detail, because you kind of glossed over it, how, like you said, Tesla is a scam and it's committing arbitrage. Can you just go a little bit deeper than what you offered in the webinar?
No problem. Well, so the business of Tesla is very simple. They sell cars, right? But for every car that they sell, they gain a carbon credit. Now, the more cars that Tesla sells, the more carbon credits they get. They accrue them. But see, they don't need them because the whole point of their business is that they're producing electric cars. So they take those carbon credits and they sell them. Now, that sale on the carbon markets, right, as carbon offsets that are sold to other companies, Tesla gets money from that. It's a lot of money. And if you look at their balance sheet, their financial statements, it's right there in black and white. You don't have to take my word for it. Go Google it for yourself. See, their business is not selling cars. Their business is selling carbon offsets. That is their real business. And they are manufacturing cars in order to accrue these carbon offsets. See?
And other businesses that buy their credits, they're required to buy to
exactly.
Like government is forcing them to basically pay for polluting. Is that?
Yes, exactly. Because what happens is that, see, companies have caps, and it's calculated differently in different states and different countries and for various reasons in various industries and whatnot. But they have caps as to how much carbon they can emit. Okay. And so suppose, see, you have a company that manufactures whatever, okay? It doesn't matter what it manufactures, but it's something that produces carbon. And you produce, say, 25 tons of carbon per year, but your government imposed cap is only 10 tons per year. Again, I'm just making up the numbers just for the sake of this hypothetical. Now, I'm Tesla. Now, I can sell you 15 tons of carbon credit, carbon offsets. I can sell them to you, and you pay me cash money, and you buy these offsets. And so your limit by the government is 10 tons, right? And you buy 15 tons of carbon offsets from Tesla, me, and that way you are covered. See, because every pound above your limit, if you don't have some sort of carbon offset, then you have to pay a fine. And you don't want to pay the fine. The fine is more expensive, a lot more expensive, of course, than buying the carbon credit in the carbon market, carbon offset rather, on the carbon market. You see? And so
Yeah,
that's how it happens.
yeah, that makes sense. I can see how that's because Tesla isn't actually reducing any carbon being emitted. These offsets are just being manufactured out of thin air by the government. It's like a government, it's like a fiat government unit. And
Yep,
like, so it's not like they're sucking carbon out of the atmosphere and burying it. It's
no,
basically a fiat, a unit of fiat that the government gives Tesla, and then Tesla gets to sell to other people that are required to buy it.
exactly,
Okay,
exactly. You see
gotcha.
what I mean?
Yeah. Thanks for that. And then the comment. I just want to say, people
By the
in
way, by the way,
general.
by the way, by the way, I have grossly simplified the whole model, but this is fundamentally what's going on. Okay, I mean,
Yeah,
just so that you understand, it's sort of like when you say that, oh, the tax man charges 50% of my gross income. Well, it's more sophisticated. It's a progressive income tax, and up to a certain level, you're paying certain amount of percentage, and above it, a different percentage. I mean, it has all that kind of minutia and all those little details. But the basic outline is what I've told you is correct. But just understand that it's really fucking complicated.
I
Okay,
see. All right.
it's not that simple. And part of the reason it's so complicated is to precisely for people not to realize what's really going on. Okay, the point of making it complex is to create opacity so that people don't know the scam that's going on.
Yeah,
You see what I'm saying?
yeah. Similar to the subprime lending.
Yeah, yeah. They
Yeah,
called it
exactly.
mortgage-backed securities. That's collateralized debt obligation. It sounds so fucking fancy and shit, but it's just a
Yeah,
scam. But okay.
gotcha.
So anyway,
And
and
then
your comment?
yeah, the comment. Just people are not smart. Like I remember a year or so ago, I was talking to a coworker, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm going to sell my Tesla stock and actually buy a Tesla." I was like, "Why?" And he was like, "Well, because I have a conscience and I just don't like to pollute. I want to do something good." And I tried to explain to him, but he couldn't understand. I was like, "Hey, man, like, do you know where our electricity comes from?" And he was like, "No." And I had to explain to him that like we are powered here in our local area by a coal-fired power plant, and I
Uh-huh.
had to tell him that you're essentially trading the emissions and the carbon out of the tailpipe of the car for
Yep.
emissions
The
and
long
carbon
tailpipe.
out of the smokestack of the fucking power plant. And he just couldn't wrap his head around it. And he was like, "But it's electric, it's clean." And so my point is, people are not smart because they just look at like surface, like who isn't against racism, who isn't against voter suppression, who isn't against lessening pollution, and they just look at the topical level without actually looking at the mechanics of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just really it's disturbing for someone that is able to like think at least like one or two steps down the line, and just most people I found are just incapable of doing that. And
Well,
that's my
let me ask you
comment.
something. What's the average IQ of people? 100, right?
I get, yeah, I suppose.
Yeah. So 100 is the average. I'm telling you that it is.
Okay.
100 is the average, right? So what does that mean? It means that 50% of the population is above average and 50% is below average.
Yeah, I know. And the problem is that these fuckers can vote.
Yeah.
Like their vote is worth just as much as my vote.
Yep.
So yeah, it was just and whenever I hear about green energy and stuff, like I always like ask a couple questions deeper, and just people just I found that most people, they just can't grasp the concept. They just look
No,
at
but
the
no, they just go for the superficiality of it. Yeah, look, that's the way of people, man. You can bitch and moan about it all you want, but it's people don't change. They're always going to be like that. The problem is that we have an elite that is willing, more than willing, they're happy to pull the wool over the eyes of half the population, the dumber half of the population, so that they can get rich and they can fuck over the whole society. That's the problem we have. We have an elite class that's just full of shit. Oh, you disappeared, man. I didn't kick you, by the way. I don't know what happened to you. Anyway, I'll bring in Igor. Igor, how's it going?
Good evening, Mr. Gonzalo, and I find it so amusing because you're such a good person because you showed your character like you felt bad because you did not make the world a better place. Meanwhile, you have CEOs of big pharma companies sleeping like babies, killing
Yeah,
thousands of people.
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Anyhow, my question is kind of topic. Because I don't have anybody else to ask this
Sure.
besides you. I don't
Go ahead.
know anybody who possesses this kind of wisdom. How does one shit test your friend? How do I turn that on my friends? What women have been doing to me for years and years. How do I do that to my friends?
What do you mean?
How do I filter out the weak guys, for example?
Oh,
Uh,
you call them faggots. Yeah. You you
yes.
you mock them and insult them. See, because see, this is in the last few years, a couple of decades. The whole anti-bullying thing. Don't bully, blah blah blah. All that bullshit, right? But you see, men treat each other like really badly. Look, let me give you an example. There was a cartoon I saw not too long ago, actually, and it's very true. It's actually I might have it on my phone. Let me just show it to you really quick. Okay. Hang on. Yeah, I actually do have it on my phone. Let me just find it real quick. Um, wait. Here it is. Okay, I'm gonna post it for you. I don't know if you guys can see it. Girls versus guys. It's a 4-panel post, and let me read it to you because you can't see it properly on camera, so I'll read it to you. In the first panel, there are these 3 girls, right? There's a blonde girl and a brunette girl and a girl with black hair. And the blonde girl says, "Bye, girls." And the other 2 girls say, "Bye, sweetie." And as soon as the blonde is gone, one of the girls says, "That bitch." And the other says, "Yeah, she's such a slut." And then the third panel is 3 guys. And one guy says, "Die, homo." The other says, "See ya, faggot." And the third one says, who's walking away, says, "See ya, you dumb fuckers." And the third guy walks away. And the 2 guys who remain say, "He is a cool guy. Yeah, he really is." See, that pretty much tells you all, right? See, guys, they treat each other badly as a shit test. And if you accept being treated shittily, being spoken to, like, "Hey, faggot, how's it going?" What happens is that, see, it's a shit test to see how resilient the other man is. If he's going to lose his temper, lose his cool over some casual insult. Because you see, if a guy loses his cool, if a guy gets flustered, then it's a signal that he's not going to keep his cool when an emergency happens. See? And that's a guy's shit test, to insult and demean even a guy that he's considering as a possible friend. And that's what you do. And young kids do this all the time, but now we've sort of like taught them not to do it, which is a mistake. See? Guys shit test to figure out if the guy is worthwhile, you got to sort of like abuse them a little bit. I mean, not like, not say something that is actually hurtful. Okay. Not say, for instance, I know that your mother is a whore who sells her body out for
Yeah.
$10 a night. No, it has to be something like, just a casual insult, that kind of thing. And of course, you want to do that so you can see if the guy is dependable. Mhm. It's important for you. But yeah, it's a very good question, by the way. It's extremely good. It's actually a topic that I have planned for when I start doing free videos again. But I'll tell you right now that uh, making sure that the men in your life are worthwhile, you have to first of all decide, are these men who I depend on for some reason? Okay. You don't do this with everybody that crosses your path. Only the men who actually matter to you. Okay. Now, if it's a business relationship, never confuse friendship with business. Okay. Friends are friends and business is business. You can be friendly with a business associate, but you should never be friends. And so, since you're never going to be friends with a business associate, you never have to do this kind of shit test. Okay. You just want to be straightforward and matter of fact. Yeah.
Sure, and I just wanted to update you on the whole Novak Djokovic fiasco. This is an insight I think you're not going to get from anybody who is not from Serbia, because
What?
we have this company, Australian company, Rio Tinto, and
Yeah.
they want to mine lithium. Talking about
Ah,
talking about renewable fucking energy, the
yeah.
fucking shit that makes the battery needs to
Yeah.
get mined somewhere. And
Yeah.
Germany has the biggest lithium mine in whole of Europe.
Mhm.
But Germany, they don't want to pollute their country. Perfectly understandable. So they go to Balkan,
To,
Africa,
to
and Europe,
Serbia. Yeah.
Balkans, yeah. And he basically supported protest against Rio Tinto, and he was like, uh, health is human right, blah blah blah. And the guy who is lobbying for Rio Tinto is the guy who was most adamant against him. So yeah, that's also
Really?
a plus.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really interesting. So it's Rio Tinto, huh? And him
Yes,
being good to know. Yeah, because he got kicked out of the country finally, right?
yes. Finally, they deported him, and he won't be coming back. So yeah.
No, yeah, and the thing is, see, the Australians only hurt themselves. Yeah, yeah. I mean, because this shit will eventually wind down. Okay, I don't know how long it'll take though. That's the thing that has me worried. But yeah,
I
and
talked to the Slovenian nurse that leaked the papers in person, and
really,
we speculate it's going to end this year because they are manipulating data, but you cannot stop the spread of word of mouth. It's
no,
too spreading too fast. So yeah,
yeah, and too
I
many
don't
people are
want
talking
to
about
be
adverse
holding you
side
anymore,
effects.
Mr. Gonzalo. Thank you for your time. Bye.
Take care. Hey, Anatol, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. What's on your mind, man?
Oh, just put a comment in the Tesla story. I think their entire profit margin comes from subsidiaries from or the
From selling their carbon offsets? Yeah, I think actually
exactly.
more than their. I mean, all of their net profits and then some. I mean, I think that they would not be a viable company without those carbon offsets. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And the other comment is so if you look at the efficiency of electricity, by the time it actually gets to electricity,
Yeah.
it's only about 30%. And 70% of the electricity is called rejected energy. And
Yeah. Yeah.
well, a little bit to that is, for solar, the sun doesn't always shine, but also with wind, there's just immense amount of problems to get the wind power to the actual grid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
all the residents, all the stability issues that come with
Yeah.
doing.
What happens also is that wind usually is going to be in some out of the way place. That's going to be a fucking nightmare to get it to population centers. The whole thing is bullshit, you know? And
Well, and also just
it's so
principally,
depressing.
if you start looking at how the power grid is designed, you need to have a coal-fired plant next to a nuclear power plant for a lot of different reasons to provide peak offsets, because nuclear can ramp up at a very slow speed, and coal
Mhm.
can go a little faster than you have peaker plants.
Sure.
But you start looking at integrating renewables, and especially with their variability.
So you know about the energy business.
Yeah, and you're basically, loading the gun for.
So no, it's important. I'm going to have on the spot confirmation. Anything I said was bullshit. Tell me, be honest, because I won't mute you, and you can say anything that I've said is bullshit or flat out wrong. Please.
Well, one thing that you really did point out, which was, kind of confirms a lot of what I see, is the financial aspect of, how much does solar cost? There's this perception that it costs, oh, it's cheaper. It's cheaper. Well, subsidies, there's so many other things, but if you look at the engineering side of it, of electricity in general, and break things down to how many joules of energy do you get from this, how many joules of energy do you get from this, and the numbers are very scary. Just
yeah. So nothing I said was bullshit, as far as you could tell.
No, it's just a different angle on a side that I know, because it's when you know about a subject and you hear another subject and you see a lot of parallels as far as it's
because I'll be quite honest. When I got involved in the solar energy business, I didn't have a fucking clue about it, right? And I don't really give a shit about it insofar as like knowing the nuts and bolts, and that's not my job. My job was to figure out a way to raise capital for this thing. I mean, the craft that I learned was writing and filmmaking. I can talk about that, like the minutia of it, till the cows come home. But like the minutia of energy production, I don't really know. But I knew the outlines enough, and I picked up enough along the way to realize it's just bullshit. It's just like giant scam. And what was so depressing was to see how easy it was to manipulate the numbers so that something that was not profitable could on paper appear to be profitable. And if it could get the imprimatur of somebody important, somebody with credentials, all of a sudden your bullshit Excel spreadsheet could be passed off as the truth, and no one would be the wiser. It was just so depressing. It was a huge red pill for me, by the way.
Well, yeah, it's doesn't matter who votes; it matters who counts the votes, right? And
exactly
same
right.
logic applies there. But it's just the same thing, spreadsheet capitalism.
Yeah,
you can do a lot with it, but then the cows come home one day and you start looking.
The cows are coming home. Okay.
Okay.
And I look at the fucking Europeans, man. They are gonna suffer a cold winter. They are gonna have rolling blackouts. In Germany, I mean, fucking Germans are going to have rolling blackouts, man. I mean, I can understand if the fucking Spaniards or the Italians had rolling blackouts, but the fucking Krauts, man. I mean, they're supposed to have their shit organized. You know what I'm saying? And they're going to have rolling blackouts. Unfucking believable. It's just fucking shocking. It's funny. It's really goddamn funny. But, well, oh, you're in California, right?
No, North Carolina.
North Carolina. Okay. For some reason, I thought that you were in California. But anyway, oh no, because I was going to ask you about something about California, which is the how in LA they robbed that train. Did you see it?
I did not know.
Oh man, they robbed the train of everything on it, and they robbed it and left so much debris and garbage on the train tracks that the next train got derailed by it. I'm not kidding. Guys, go check it out. It's really fucking funny. Anyway, anything else on your mind, man?
Oh no, hey, just enjoyed talking to you. It's the first time commenting, but I've been following a lot of your stuff for a few years now.
Hey, thanks very much. I really appreciate that, man. I hope I'm hoping I'm living up to I'm working up to snuff. That I'm meeting your standards.
Well, not standards, but I never went into education, but it sounds like what the parts you learn is in school is it's not necessarily to learn the subject matter, but get enough ideas so you start thinking on your own. And a lot of the things that you've said maybe have not been on point with what I sort of see, but it broadens the thinking horizon of, okay, well, let's look at it this way.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm really glad, because ultimately that's the important thing of like looking at different points of view on the same issue, because ultimately it's like the truth is not the truth is objective, but our point of view is always going to be very limited. And so what we should try to do is maximize that point of view by appreciating what other people have to say about the same topic, because the topic isn't going to change. but how we look at it does, and we want to get it as complete as possible. So
Oh, yeah,
anyway,
well, yeah. All right. Yeah, it's a saying. It's what is it? Perception is reality to the perceiver, or something like that. But
I've
I'll
never
think
heard
of
of
it.
that.
It's
That's
a
a good
good
line.
one. It's perception is reality to the yeah.
Anybody in chat know the full quote? Because that's a pretty good line. Perception is the reality to the perceiver, or something along
No,
that.
perception is reality to the perceiver. But
Pretty good
anyhow.
line.
All right,
Anyway,
take care.
take it easy, Anatol.
Right.
Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Hey, man. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine. What's on your mind, man?
Oh, I just want to say that this is the first webinar that I'm in. I just joined yesterday the Patreon. I've been looking at your content on the YouTube channel from 2019 when I was working in England.
Yeah.
Now I'm back in Romania, and I gotta tell you that the stuff that you told on the YouTube channel, and I feel to some point regret that I didn't join your Patreon earlier, because
Great, thanks. I appreciate that.
no, some of the stuff that you are talking about on the YouTube channel and on the Patreon as well, like they really helped me a lot in life, because there are stuff that nobody really teaches you or nobody knows about them, because we became so desensitized in our society with basic stuff that even our parents don't know about them. My one of my question is, at what point does a company, I mean, how big does it need to become to get those credit points? Or
I don't. That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the specific mechanics of it. So you'd have to look into it yourself. And
Okay.
I would depend if it's any kind of company that has to file an environmental impact report for whatever activity it's carrying out, then that company would have access to a potential carbon credits, the carbon market system. But that's a very good question. I have no idea, because I've never been involved in any business that would be into that. The solar energy project that I was involved in, I don't remember how that facet of it worked, to tell you the truth. And it wasn't something that I found that appealing to me or that important, because I was focused on other stuff of that. But,
because I'm also thinking from the legislative point of view, like if a country has those credit points, let's say that the headquarters of that country is, let's say, in the United States, like Tesla, and somebody wants to buy it, and their headquarters is in Eastern Europe,
it's
for
international.
example.
Oh, you know, it is international. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know how exactly it works, because, like I said, I've never been involved in that market. Okay. But I don't know exactly how it works, but I do believe it's transnational. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the questions that was raised to me when you were talking about those credit points. Because I heard of them before, I didn't do a lot of research.
Yeah, it's the
This
carbon
was
market. Yeah, it's the carbon market and carbon offsets. You Google that, and you'll get a whole bunch of information about it, and the specifics of it. Okay. But because ultimately the focus of my discussion today is not the specifics of it, the mechanics of it, but just the overarching view that the whole fucking thing is a fucking scam, And so, yeah, I hate it. Anything else? Anything else on your mind, man?
No, thanks, man. But gotta say that I'll try to be on every weekend on the webinar here with you, because you really talk about some really interesting topics, and you're really well knowledgeable in a lot of those stuff.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll
Cheers.
catch you next time, Chris. Take it easy.
Thanks.
Hey, Vlad, how's it going?
Hi, Coach.
What's on your mind, man? Yeah, I hear you fine.
Yeah, so I want to ask, would it be worth getting into uranium stocks, since
I can't give any kind of advice. I can't give any kind of financial advice like that.
I mean, just what you would think about that. I mean,
I don't have any opinion about it.
Okay. Would you be able to advise any books about trading or anything like that?
Any books about? I'm sorry.
About trading. I mean, to learn how to trade stocks.
I honestly don't know what books to read in order to learn about trading, because I never read a book about trading. I learned by doing,
Mhm.
and making huge mistakes that taught me valuable lessons. But I honestly I can't point you to a book because I really don't know. And there are so many thousands of books about trading, you know.
Yeah,
So I wouldn't be able to help you that. I wish I could, but I don't know. Chat, why don't you guys help me out? If you guys know of a really good book, talk about it in the chat. A book about trading, because the chat might be able to help you out better than I ever could, to tell you the truth.
have you heard about Anton Krill?
Anton Krill, who's he? The name sounds
He's
very
like
familiar.
he's famous trader. He made the show years ago. It was called Million Trader, something like that. And now he's doing the coaching, like he's coaching,
Okay.
teaching people how to trade. And some people say that he's a scammer. I don't know. I think he gives some good data, but he might be a scammer as well.
Well, if somebody is a scammer, if they're asking you for money, okay? If they're giving you advice and just want you to buy their book, then they're not really a scammer, right? Like for instance, I charge $5 per month on Patreon, and $10 for the Patreon and weekly webinar, right? Is that a scam? Well, no, you're getting a service. You're getting a product, content as delivered, right? So you can't call that a scam. You might disagree with the content. That's different. That's not a no-show. Because if I were to fail to deliver the content, if I said, I'll deliver this content and I don't do it, then that's a scam. But
No, that's
or you could argue it's a scam. If there are good
uh,
reasons for not delivering something, then it's not a scam either. A scam, I'm always very careful about using that word, because a scam is when you promise something that you have no intention of delivering and that you could not possibly deliver. And in that measure, by that definition, the green energy whole structure is a scam, because they cannot deliver what they are promising, and they never can, and they know it. Okay. Yeah, I just want to emphasize that fact. And the other thing of this guy that you were mentioning, Krill, is it? If he's just charging a monthly subscription fee or something, but he's delivering content, then it's not
he's
a scam.
charging like you need at least like 10,000 pounds to
Oh,
go through the whole course.
yeah, that sounds like a scam. But I don't know. I don't know, and so I have no idea who this person is, and so I have no opinion about the guy.
Okay.
Anything else?
Well, to ask you also, what do you think about current situation in Ukraine that is happening? I heard that Zelensky sort of like turning to into COVID policy, same as Russia. Like they become very obedient lately, same as Americans and Europeans.
I do not speak publicly about my opinion about Ukraine for a very simple reason. I am a non-citizen living in Ukraine. And
Okay.
so it would be, if I go to your house and I start telling you what I
Yeah.
think of how you live, that wouldn't be right. You see what I'm saying? And so I do not discuss Ukraine and Ukrainian politics in public ever, even on Patreon, because it would put me in a very awkward position insofar as the authorities here in Ukraine. And
Yeah, I totally understand.
to what
Okay.
point?
Yeah, just last one. Mexico held very good. They don't ask PCR test, and like they held probably the best in the world. Like, well, I mean, Latin America held strongest regarding the COVID.
Mhm.
Why it happened so like that? Why government didn't push them stronger? Why it's like that? What do you
I
think?
don't understand your question. Could you repeat that, please?
I mean, everybody introduced compulsory PCR testing. Like if you're flying to Germany, for example, you must have a green pass or you have to do the test. If you fly to Mexico, you don't have to do any testing. You just go there and there's no mandates at all, pretty much. Only if you go to shop, you have to put on the mask, from what I heard. But if you want to fly, sit on a plane, you don't have to do any test pre-departure.
Look, my thinking about this whole thing is that all of this testing is just security theater, and there's no upside to it. Because see, what benefit is there? I mean, it's always struck me as just bullshit. Okay, and it's the same as when the hypersecurity started on airplane flights after 9/11. It's security theater. It's the illusion that something is being done when nothing is being done. It's just, and because it's theater, it doesn't change the outcome of what will happen in any given country. My suspicion is that probably in Mexico, they're just ignoring it and undercounting people with COVID. And also, by the way, if you are counting people who are infected with COVID, you're going to have as many people as you count. Okay. The only metric that really matters is deaths. That's the only metric that really matters. And if you look at all the countries, there has not been that significant a change in mortality rates during 2020. It was slightly higher, but only slightly. What's really started to take off is the excess mortality over the last 4 to 6 months in various countries. That's starting to take off. And that, I think, is something that we should be paying attention to. And I think that is, I personally would not be surprised if it turned out that the reason for the excess deaths is because of the vaccine. That's my thinking at this time.
Yeah, most likely the vaccine is the real killer.
Yeah. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Okay,
Take it
thank
easy,
you very much.
Vlad. Good talking to
Thanks.
you. Hey, Rahul, how's it going? Rahul, you there? Hello, Rahul. I have you unmuted on my end, so I don't know what's going on. You straighten out your situation, and I'll bring in. Oh, is this Senior Frog?
Yes, it is.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. What's on your mind, man?
Hey, so what's up with all this green energy? So you don't agree with the AOC and our leadership? They're the brilliant minds of our. I mean, that's why we elected them, right? To tell us what
Yeah.
to do with green energy. So no, just corresponding.
Because we are so stupid. We're just the plebes, man. We're just so stupid, and they're just so smart and wonderful and pretty and got such great tits that they know better. They know better than us. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you are
Because
also
you're
not
a
in love with her.
plebe. I'm a plebe. We are just nobody. We're white nationalists. I mean, look at me. Don't I look like a white nationalist to you? Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm gonna get my shotgun and I'm gonna go down there. I'm gonna like hunt some minorities. I'm just gonna blow them to smithereens. Yeah, and then I'm gonna eat my barbecue ribs and just get down in a hoedown. Yeah.
that also tells me you don't have a crush on her, right? You don't want
I'd
to
fuck
date
her.
her,
Yeah, I'd
or
fuck her, but when I just put like duct tape on her mouth, other than that, sure. I'd put duct
oh my
tape on
God.
her mouth until it was time for her to give me a blowjob. But other than that, yeah, I don't want to hear her. Her voice is just
Yeah.
awful. But anyway,
I
what's
guess
on your mind, man?
between
Serious.
so
Let's get to it.
yeah, so back to this. It's a great presentation. So
Thank you.
I think some of the things you mentioned, for example, back to the technologies that have been around and presented as green. There's one small turbine company. It's a micro turbine company. It's like a midget version of a gas turbine, and they're 65 kilowatts. They're called Capstone. You can look them
Yeah.
up. Actually, I just did a few minutes ago because I kind of forgot about it for years. So back in 2000, around 2005, they were trying to they made this tiny product, and they were trying to find a market. They were just like looking for where to put them, and they didn't have a real application. So they made the thing. It was a nightmare for maintenance, and they were putting them on buses in China. Now I just looked at what they're doing. They're trying to, I don't know, they sell them as green, so it's actually hilarious if you see. But that never really took off as a viable technology. Now for large turbines, like I don't know, megawatts, they were trying to market them for landfills and you have this what they call low Wobbe gas, associated gas, etc. But that was a nightmare in itself. Just the maintenance, just the adjusting the fuel value, because it was just vary the heat value of the fuel. So anyway, long story short, it was just a lot of technologies that started making all this noise and then kind of went away. And there's a few others, right? So I
Well,
mean,
no, yeah, but what happens is that, see, all of these technologies initially they make noise and see if they can get funding, because the whole point of it is, insofar as raising capital for some business is concerned, what a lot of times you want to do is you want to have some basic proof of concept, and then you go to the press, because it's easy to get the press on board in whatever green energy bullshit you're pushing, right? And get them on board, do some interviews, get on TV a little bit, and this is easily done, and this can raise your profile. And so investors, they see you on TV, and investors are fundamentally stupid. You got to understand, they don't have a hell of a lot of IQ points, and so they'll see you on TV and they'll take you a lot more seriously just because you're on TV, which is silly, but they do. And so you do some interviews, you appear on TV, they take you more seriously because of it, and they throw money your way. And so that's why you see a lot of projects like micro turbines, shit like that. I mean, stuff that isn't going to have any kind of utility at all. They appear and disappear. And there are tons of technology like that. Okay. And so you got to understand it's a game. It's a game, and it's a corrupt game. That's what you have to understand.
there's another one called the fuel cell with the Tesla battery that when you add all the cost of the land infrastructure and just the maintenance, and it's all like a zero sum. The only ones that make money are the ones that are on the payroll of that company.
Yeah.
So all that said, and I guess just a fair question playing the devil's advocate. So maybe, well, we're seeing all these different technologies that seem to go nowhere. But what if you follow kind of the stages of marketing, where early adopters and then mainstream and then laggards, and kind of where the majority of the technology matures. So what if we, by not supporting one of these alternatives, we don't let it mature? For example, of course, I mean, you mentioned solar panels are toxic as heck, and I agree. But what if something came in the future that would be less toxic, or some other?
Yeah.
So any of these technologies, what if we let them mature and then become more competitive? Do you see that as a possibility?
Well, it seems right now that the whole system is so corrupt that I don't think that anything, unless there's some serious breakthrough in fusion technology, I don't see any kind of advance in green energy. Not even, I mean, there might be incremental increases, more efficient, slightly more efficient solar panels and slightly more efficient batteries and shit like that, but no real breakthrough. I mean, it's just going to be the same shit, And bottom line, everybody over the last 30, 40 years has put all their brains into coming up with some sort of seriously viable alternative energy source. And there, conceptually, none has arisen. The only thing that comes close is fusion energy. So my thinking is that everybody should focus on that and throw capital in that direction. But of course, they're not going to do it because the United States and Western Europe, for that matter, do not have any kind of coherent energy policy or any kind of coherent technological development policy. And so,
Yeah, actually, I don't know if you know, but there's actually like a current revive of the whole fusion technology. There's a lot of companies trying to make it there.
yeah, but I mean, we'll see how that goes. But anyway, Senor Frog, I'm going to have to call it a broadcast because I've been going on for like 3 hours and it's time for me to go. So great
Absolutely.
talking to you, Senor Frog. Take it easy.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. So I'm going to call an end to the broadcast because I've been going like 3 hours and 10 minutes and I'm like out of gas, to tell you the truth. But yeah, I just want to say that the whole thing is very depressing. Okay. And everybody wants to seem virtuous. That's the thing that's going on. Everybody wants to show off what a good person they are. And that's why they get suckered into this bullshit. And because the Western societies are rich enough, they have gone along with this bullshit. The great thing about this crash that we are experiencing, I personally believe that we are in the process of crashing our economy and our entire society. Retrospectively, people will realize that the start of the crisis and collapse was March of 2020, right? And we are in the middle of it. And it's just going to keep on going, rolling downhill. You know what I mean? The great thing about everything going to shit is that people eventually are going to start to realize that they have to be pragmatic and they cannot afford to put up with all kinds of bullshit like this green energy shit. And, it's going to be tossed out the window. And that's the good thing of hitting bottom. But we haven't hit bottom yet. Okay. And it'll be a while. So there's going to be more of this bullshit. Just remember, it's all bullshit. The whole fucking thing is a scam. And most importantly, the people involved know it's a scam. It's not a surprise to them. They know it's a scam. They know it's bullshit. They know that none of this green tech will ever achieve anything that they promised. Okay? Okay. Take it easy, guys, and I will catch you next Sunday.